Today is Tuesday, January 14th, 2025, and it is 4:10 p.m. We are convened as the Provo City School Board of Education. We are meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah, and we will begin with a roll call. I'm Jennifer Partridge, Vice President, and then Tuesday,
Emily Harrison,
and Board Member.
Melanie Hall, Board Member.
Lisa Boyce, Board Member.
Meg Van Wagenen, Board Member.
Punch Wallace, Student Board Member.
Monica Tuones, Student Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Terry McCade, Board Member.
Devin Daly, Business Administrator.
Wendy Dow, Superintendent.
Okay, thank you. And we want to welcome our other guests here in attendance with us today and thank our tech people and Bonnie for all your support with our meeting today. Is there a motion to start our study session?
I move that we start our study session.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Mills, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are in study session. And we will begin with a handbook training by Gina.
Okay, Bonnie has, I believe, the slideshow. So while she's bringing it up, I talked, Jennifer just said go ahead and do what you want to do because we're in the process of redoing the schedule. So I thought about skipping the beginning part. The beginning part is our strategic plan. But then I realized that everything we do, we know this already, right? But everything we do, we'll go back to that. So we're just going to quickly review our brand spanking new school board handbook. So the very first paragraph, this Board of Education handbook has been created to compile in one place the norms, guidelines, and responsibilities of the School Board of Education. This will serve as a tool to help new and current board members in their duties. So this isn't just for Emily, who just came on the board, or for the students who have been on for a little bit. This is for all of us, and we should be referring to it as we need help. So go to the next page. So the first thing it says is strategic plan. So I have a kind of a screenshot of some of the main parts of the strategic plan on the right. So we have our mission, which is to welcome, educate, and inspire. Our vision, which is the Provo City School District is a vibrant learning environment where all students become lifelong learners and engaged community members. Then we have our core values: belonging, creativity, growth, empowerment, community. And then our priorities: academic achievement, wellness and safety, stewardship of resources. And then all of that is, I can't remember what are the two things on the outside the circle.
It's about family and community
engagement
and opportunities for all.
So all that's encapsulated by those things. So I'm not here to talk all about the strategic plan, but just kind of a little reminder. What I want to focus on is what's underneath the word strategic plan. This should be serving as a bedrock of everything we do. Everything we do needs to tie back to something in our strategic plan. Every decision, every action, every initiative should be grounded in the principles and goals outlined in this document, ensuring alignment and consistency across the organization. And that's honestly one of my favorite things. It will help us to be consistent across all of the schools, all of the departments, and make sure that we are aligned. And I have really enjoyed when people are talking to me about different things, I will say like, well, okay, academic achievement is one of the things that is one of our priorities, or this falls under wellness and safety. And I think as we just continue to practice this, it will become second nature to us. Okay, and I think two more. So here's the table of contents for our handbook. And we have legal status, responsibilities and norms, relationships and protocols, which includes appointment of our business administrator, superintendent, our relationships with everyone, each other, people in the public, in the district, and agenda development. So I was thinking, how do we, we're not going to take time to talk about it, but I was thinking, how do we make sure that everything that we're talking about here, it's more than that, I just picked a few. How do we make sure that all of these things go back to something in our strategic plan? Board meetings, our meetings, hearings, public comment, our participation in National and Utah School Board Association, our Utah Athletic Association, and then any items requiring approval, all of those things need to go back to our strategic plan. We have attorney services, and then our district finances, right? Budget process, property taxes, certified tax rate, or truth in taxation, our RDs and bonding authority. All of those things need to tie back to our strategic plan and our priorities and the things that we talked about, as well as district leadership organization. So I think the next one is the last one. Every action we take should advance the priorities of our strategic plan, ensuring that we stay aligned and focused on our long-term goals. So that really, I thought, was a good, as we start the new calendar year, it's a good reminder that our strategic plan is where we need to be. Everything needs to go back to our strategic plan. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? To your last point, Gina, at the USBA class that I was doing, I shared with them about how we do the agenda tracking sheet, and they really loved that idea. And someone said, and do you have on there like how the item requested is in line with your strategic plan? And I said, we just finished that. I hadn't even thought about that. Let's do it. So I've added that column now, so then when we are thinking about our agenda, we can think about how it lines up with that.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. We are going to move on to our leadership discussion. And before we open it up for the discussion part, I was on the board for a while before, and like Emily today, like I was brand new and we elected new leadership and I just was kind of there. And it wasn't until later where I realized like there are things in the handbook about how we do this. There's things in the information from the state board, or not state board, but state association. There's even code, like what is the role of the president and things like that. And I didn't realize that till much later. And I think a lot of us already know this, but it would be helpful just to review all of that before we do our discussion. So here's a slide about, this is from our handbook, that we elect the president and vice president every 2 years, and one of those two policies says that it happens the first board meeting of January right after there's been an election. So that's today. And then you can see what our recent practice has been, that we've tried to balance different sides of the city. Usually we don't pick someone who's been on the board for 3 days, so you might. Yay!
Thank you. Take a deep breath.
All right. Okay, this is from a guide to effective school boards, which is a resource that the Utah School Board Association provides to us, and it's very wordy. I'm not going to read it all for you, but basically it says that there's different ways that different boards handle it. Some have a president stay on there. Like I know some presidents have been serving for, like 12 years as their board president. Some pick seniority, but it does say here in the second paragraph that the quality of leadership should determine the board's president and not other like, oh, this is just how we always do it. So, and then, yes, this next one, it says, here are some characteristics to look for. And really, this is a long list to scare off anybody from wanting the position. But so, communication, presiding over the meeting, they're going to be a team player and lead, but work with everybody. And then the next one. Oh, that was it, just kidding. Our handbook, I didn't include that, lists some other skills as well. That was probably the one that was more the scary one. Maybe that's why I didn't list it. All right, and then also from this USBA resource that the vice president fulfills the duties if the president cannot. So pick someone who has the same qualities.
Kind of like Miss America?
There you go. Except we don't have this in our handbook, but I feel like the practice that we have had is that the vice president and president work together on things. Like they're both there planning the agendas together. They consult with one another. It's not just the president doing all of it. Next one. Okay. So this is from our handbook that president and vice president have the same voting rights but have other responsibilities. So they run meetings, first and last to speak to an issue, developing the agendas. Is there one more? Fostering unity and harmony, airtime. Yeah, this is the list that scares me because I didn't include it. And having meetings to just get everything, keep it running well as a board, right? And to represent the board in different arenas. So I think that's the last one. Okay. Thank you. So with that in mind, will open it up for a discussion for our board leadership for the next 2 years.
I do have a question / comment about this. I was talking with someone that I just met at USBA about their board leadership, and they were expressing kind of a practice that I haven't seen, but I just wanted to throw it out as something that I wouldn't like to have happen. Does that make
Would
sense?
not?
Yes,
Is that what
would
you're
not.
saying? Okay.
And that was that their board president and vice president frequently directed the superintendent in their meetings, and I would hope that if there were a reason for there to need to be directives given, it would be after the entire board was given input into that process. Does that make sense? Because I thought, well, I don't know that happens or doesn't happen in my district, because she was talking a lot about specifics. And I thought, anyway, so I just wanted to put it out there that it isn't on here that is the job of the president and vice president, and so I just want to say I hope it wouldn't happen that directives would be given, do you know what I mean, to our superintendent or our business administrator, unless those directives were the result of a conversation as a board. That's it.
Okay.
I don't, like I said, I don't know that that's a thing, but because she had big feelings about it, I thought, oh, I should.
I would say that there are probably some smaller things, like just things just kind of keep, minutia things that I think are okay, but I think for the most part, anything that we can, like it's not time limited or doesn't need to, I think we need to make sure that, and especially if they're bigger decisions, then I think I agree.
Sure, but then at least be communicating to us so that we know that those even little things are being communicated, and that shouldn't be our superintendent or business administrator's job to communicate that to us. Rather, if that's happening, then you just give us an update.
Yeah,
So we would
leadership
know.
should be representing the board, and it's hard to do that if you haven't found out what the will of the board is. Thank you, Lisa. Okay.
And I guess I can think of instances in the last 2 years where communication was happening from board leadership, from Rebecca, about just communicating anything that was kind of more minutia or like more timely individually, right? Because we're not together as a board. But I guess if I reflect on that, I'm like, oh, those were instances that did happen when we were brought into a loop about anything that just came up,
which is super appreciated. Yeah.
Okay. So what we usually do at this meeting is we kind of discuss together who we would like our leadership to be, and then at the business meeting, that's when we take an official nomination and a vote on that. So we would like to start that discussion.
I think that it would be good if you would move on as the president.
Yeah,
I've seen some head nods.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want it. I don't want that job. You can have it.
I would be happy to do so if that was what you guys want.
I think that even though it's not like have to do, I think kind of doing the swapping, I think it has benefits, and so I think that is one reason. But I also think, Jennifer, you are organized, you communicate, which I always really appreciate how clearly you communicate through email, or even as your role as a USBA board director, really do a great job of that, which I appreciate. Someone who's leading us on the board.
And you've been preparing for this basically.
Had some training and advice.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wants to weigh in on that? Okay, so then we need a vice president.
I think if we have someone from, like, again, to represent all of the schools, it should be someone who's at Provo High and kind of, do you know what I mean, connected to other parts of the city. So I would ask Gina to do it. But I talked to you guys, so I would ask Gina as someone, if you're willing to do it, that I think would be a great balance to, or like complementary leader.
Yeah, I'm happy.
I'm willing.
I am willing.
Yes.
And Gina?
I am willing. I know Terry has some things coming up that she will be very busy, and then Emily is brand new, and she'll quit her We don't wanna do that.
Don't quit.
No, we're not gonna throw her in, so I'm the last choice, which is great. I'm happy to do it, so yeah.
Well,
Your first class choice. First
last.
yeah, let's hold
Oh,
up.
so let me rephrase that. For me, my choice, I am my own last choice. I'm not speaking for any of you.
'Cause, yeah,
But I'm willing to do it.
I do think, Gina, you have skills, leadership skills that are very useful and helpful for us as board in serving in that capacity. Also great communicator, great systems person. And you're able to really like, okay, we have this information, now what? Like I get lost and just keep talking and not getting us anywhere, so I appreciate that.
Very
That's a
level-headed.
skill set that you bring. So.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, and I agree with all the compliments for Jean. Got a lot
Can I
of
still
good
sit on the
thoughts.
end?
No.
Yeah, you're the vice president. Oh, wait, if you're
You
gonna
can
do what you
sit.
want.
Yeah, I can do
It's gonna be a different end. Okay. Okay, so we will take care of that at the beginning of the business meeting. And now we're gonna move on to board committee and graduation speaking assignments. Let's start with graduation assignments, if you're all okay with that. So there is an attachment here of what we had last time. There we go. Okay, beginning of the second page is what the graduation assignments were last time. So, Timpview High School, Provo High School, does anyone have a graduate this year? Lisa, do you want to? Oh, and Emily. Okay. So, what we've traditionally done is if you want to speak at your child's graduation, you get that opportunity. So.
Want to, is it?
They will be thrilled.
I will.
Okay, so we'll put Lisa for Timpview and Emily for Provo High. Okay, that leaves independence and adult education for our May ones, and then we have our fall graduation, which is usually October, the very beginning of October.
I'm fine to do any of those.
Same here. I didn't speak last year, so I'm happy to speak.
You didn't either, did you?
No, I did adult ed before that.
Okay, so Gina and Meg, which ones do you want, and then we'll fill in.
Do you care, Matt?
I could do independence since that's one of the schools that I'm
Okay.
over this year. I would be happy to do that.
So adult ed or fall.
Adult ed.
Okay. I think I heard Melanie.
I
Do
did
you
fall
want
this year,
fall?
but I'll do it again.
Okay.
Oh, well, we can swap. I'm
No,
happy to do adults.
It's different graduates.
Nobody cares what we say.
Nobody even knows we're
That
there.
is a self-
No,
I
let's
can say
swap.
the same thing and nobody would know.
It's true. Let's just swap anyway since you already did it. So I'll do fall, she can do,
I'll do adult.
yeah.
Okay.
Woohoo!
Wow.
Terry!
Although I do
I
love
was
Terry.
being silent.
I know, I do,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
just
like, if I
Terry,
just
yeah,
sit
right.
here quiet enough, nobody's gonna ask her to talk.
I know, I almost
Feel
said
the
Terry.
same,
What?
Terry. I feel the same. Okay. See, we started with that one because that one's easier. So there you go. Okay. So now we're gonna go to committees. And I emailed you guys if you haven't had a chance to see it today, a couple of resources so you can look at our old spreadsheet, or I created a color-coded new one that helps my brain. Whichever one's better for you.
I'm excited.
And it's in rainbow shades.
I just did Roy G. Biv, but instead of two purples, so you got okay.
What?
Okay, so I'd like to start with figuring out, I feel that policy and legislative committee are our two main board committees. Like, these are the ones that require the most work as board members, where we are active members and not as much as in some others you're more there to serve or advisory. We have 7 board members, and between those two committees we have 6 spots. So we're going to have basically almost everybody gets one of those committees. So, we've already got some of you serving, and I think you're all pretty good to stay where you're at. We just need to figure out with Emily and Melanie which ones you're going to go to. So, the issue then becomes the timing of them, right? Yep. So do you want to explain your
Yeah,
timing?
so my schedule, Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm free after 4. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm free after 3. Fridays is a wild card, I can make things work almost every Friday.
Okay, so policy committee right now meets on Mondays at 3, so if you were to be on that committee, you would not be able to go unless it was at 4.
Right.
Okay. And then legislative committee is right now Thursdays at 1, so we would have to, on a Thursday, move it to 3 for later. Okay. Melanie, do you have any scheduling things to consider?
I was just looking for Mondays. Right now I'm okay. I think it'd be okay.
Okay. So Wendy, as far as
We'll make whatever work. I'll figure it out.
okay.
So she
I
started.
can meet at 4 on Mondays, and that makes it late if we're having some people from, you know, if we have to have directors of cabinet be at policy committees, so it's probably better to do, it doesn't matter, we'll make it work, whatever's gonna work best. Monica, you're on policy, right?
Oh, yes.
And can you meet at 4 on a Monday, or is that too late?
It might be too late because I
Okay.
do work.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we switch policy to Tuesday or Thursday? Is that possible? Because if, Melanie, are you available to pick up legislative?
Yeah, I'm just providing legislative on Thursdays.
Right now we're Thursdays at 1.
I should be okay.
And normally
Could
it's
you
once
move
a
that-
month, but
could you
during
move
the
that to
session
3?
it's every week.
Or would that be tricky? Thursday at 3 for that?
It would have to be,
Terry's now crossing guard.
I am now the crossing guard Franklin, so that's,
So that one would be at 4 as well.
that's between 3:20 and 3:50, so it would have to start at 4 or end before 3.
On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I could get her by.
And these are
confident to
weekly?
get her at 3:30.
No, so legislative right now is because of it being the legislative session,
No, I'm saying.
but it's
move
usually once a
policy.
month, and then policy is every other week, just because we've had a lot of policies. If we ever run out of policies, we could go back to once a month.
We could use that as a selling
I look
point.
forward to that day. I'm sure it's possible.
Our, let's see,
But you could do Monday.
I can do.
So policy committee or legislative could figure something out.
Meg and Lisa, if policy went to 4, could you do that?
On Monday?
On Monday?
Yes.
But that was hard for me.
Oh, yeah, Monday, sorry. I'm like, why didn't that work? Okay. How about right now we leave policy committee where it's at and we put Melanie on policy committee. If someone's in the document and wants to switch that would be awesome. And then
Which document?
Emily on legislative. Legislative probably has a little more flexibility. Okay.
Is that you? Wow, you're good.
So good. Okay. Thank you.
So policy committee will still be at 3 o'clock, and then are we moving legislative committee to Thursdays at 4 then?
I think we're gonna need to just powwow about that one.
Okay.
Cause I have to put my daughter somewhere, but anyway.
Okay, we'll figure that out.
We'll
Maybe
figure it out, but
start
we
at
have a
3:30 or
smaller
something.
group to
Okay.
figure that out.
Okay,
So-
sounds good, okay.
Okay. Safety committee, we have had one representative on there, which has been Terry, who suggested we have more than that. Wendy, would you like 2 or 3 board members on there?
Well, it's Tuesdays at 10 a.m.
Yeah, it's at 10:30 in the morning.
So if you,
It's the first Tuesday of every month at 10:30.
I can too.
yeah.
Can I do it?
Can I come right after my workout class?
We
That's my
don't-
hard.
You're totally fine, hardcore, that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
I would move that if I need to.
You will help the rest of us get
I don't want to.
Yeah.
Just come late.
I think we can just have two.
Two, okay.
Hello, cabinet, two on
Yeah.
safety, are we okay with that? I think so.
Okay. And Terry, I assume you still would like to be on that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I like doing that.
And then right now, so Meg, are you okay to
Yeah,
do that?
yep.
Okay. So with that, then we have one person from legislative committee, one from policy, so then also from the safety committee, they can bring that back to knowing if policy and legislative kind of what's going on.
Okay.
Okay. Finance committee, we generally have 3. We tentatively have Terry, Lisa, and Emily on that. You guys meet on Fridays, right?
Yeah. How often do you meet?
Once a month.
Unless we don't need to
Unless
meet.
a couple of months when it's really crazy, we don't meet. Certain time, or just like
Usually
Friday, do two.
Like two.
On once a month.
But we
It's
can
the
do it
third.
later if you need to.
That's usually
Fridays
the-
are my easy days, so give me all the Fridays.
It's usually at 2:00 on the third
So
Friday.
they're all at the same time.
That would work for me.
Okay.
So that'll be Emily.
And thank you to whoever's adding the schedule on the side.
Becky. If I can't
Melanie.
remember.
Awesome. It's in the other document, but to have it all in this one is perfect. Okay.
Emily, Melanie, and Lisa?
No, it's Emily.
Sorry.
I'm not gonna be on finance committee, but I've been on
Terry,
it for 8 years, that's
Lisa,
awesome.
Lisa.
Terry, Lisa, and
Yeah,
Terry.
yeah,
Good,
Emily,
that's like
Lisa,
perfect.
and Terry.
That's so good about
If you want to fight someone for it, Melanie, let's go. You can take one. So
I'll
Melanie,
be your
we-
sub if you can't go.
Melanie, we got you on facilities. If someone wants to trade off of finance and do facilities.
I don't mind doing
Or someone.
It's fine. I'll just stop when if she can do it.
Okay.
When does facilities meet? That's like quarterly or
Yeah,
it's
it's usually quarterly. Well,
Yeah.
rather than
Right.
the second Wednesday.
Is it really? I feel like it's.
It's been on Wednesdays.
We had changed it on last one because.
Yeah, it's like the second Wednesday
That's what I'm.
at 2:15.
Can it go later so Emily can attend?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So facilities. Let's see. Gina, you've been on it. Are you ready for a break from that?
No, this one is one that's
You wanna s-
infrequent enough that I can make it
You
at
wanna
a
be
time
on
when
it.
I can make it, yeah. This
Okay.
is it's a good one for me.
Okay, and Emily, are you okay on that one? On facilities?
Second Wednesday.
We'll need to push it later. We've been doing it at 2:15, so we'll need to do it.
Would that work for you if we did it at 4:00? Capital
Do you work?
facilities?
Yeah, that 4 would work.
Okay, that might not work for me though. Cause I've got kids home from school.
Yeah.
Go ahead, take me off. Just take me off all my assignments.
She's like, excellent.
So we have Meg.
I've been on it, yeah.
Melanie, and then.
Well, it was Emily and Melanie. Meg, do you want to be on it?
I have
Meg's
been on
been
it.
Meg's been on
Do you want to stay on it then?
Just keep me on it, and if it's a
Yeah.
problem, then we can move it around.
Okay.
So, so keep Gina, pull me off. So
Okay.
there's only 3, right?
Yeah.
So Gina, Emily, and Melanie.
And then if it doesn't work, I'll just be Gina's alternate, cause I like
Yes,
that
I know,
committee.
but
I'm
I'm afraid
making my-
of making
No, I
I'm
mean,
making my
I'm
own
fi-
notes
We'll
so
just
I
do
can remember.
If you wanna
Yes
just
or
do
no?
it, that's great. Then I can just go back up.
Do you wanna just do that?
Okay.
Doesn't matter. What do you want? We can figure it out
Maybe
later.
wait
to the bottom and then switch yourselves.
Are you guys still deciding?
Yeah, we'll let you know if we change our minds.
Yeah, we're just,
So right now it's Gina?
Yes, but it might end up being Meg.
Okay, that's totally fine. Okay, student, board member, advisor, mentor, whatever.
I'm gonna keep that at least through this school year.
Yeah, so Regina's going to be our outgoing advisor with our current board members, student board members, and then whoever we select
see
will
Melanie
will
fill
start
in.
we'll
I
start
can
with
do
the
it.
new process. So I've heard Melanie express interest. Does anybody else
It would be great.
have the desire to do that?
I think that's
Okay, Melanie.
great.
It's yours.
Yay.
Okay.
And that's monthly.
That's the monthly student advisory council, and then just
First
kinda keeping
Wednesday.
tabs on them and making sure they have their questions answered.
All right, the foundation has been Terry and Lisa. Are you happy with that?
Well,
Does anyone
Lisa
want to switch on?
can't really go.
You can't go anywhere?
Only going every once in a while, frankly,
Does it
and
have it
I
at noon?
I told them that and they were like, just stay on here and
Okay.
we'll reach out to you for this past while. But if someone else is able to go and really
When
right
do you
now
guys
be
meet?
They meet at
Kayla,
noon.
the
No, the
fourth
fourth Tuesday.
they meet
Fourth
someone.
Tuesday at noon.
It would be, I feel like it would be better for someone who can actually really participate consistently, but and I would still help with anything.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there should be someone that, Terry's there, it'd be good to have two board members there just because we're,
Generally, I'm
thinking about that.
available then, but if somebody else wants.
I just need to make sure that we have, never mind.
Yeah.
It's okay, I don't need to be on there.
Oh, no,
No, oh no, you need to
Terry,
be
you're
on
doing a
there.
great job.
Terry, you're doing a great job.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Melanie or Meg, do either of you want to do that, or should I put my name?
I think you should put I'm fine with you. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Do you feel
I'm like,
that
Melanie,
way?
don't volunteer for one
volunteer.
person, what are
Don't
you
do
doing?
sure.
I've like written Meg's and Melanie's name down like a billion times here.
Some
Okay,
assignments are
right.
heavier than others.
That's so true, that is true.
All right.
If you feel up for Jennifer, I think you should put your name.
Okay.
Unless Melanie,
No.
you want it?
Okay.
I'm happy to support where I need it.
There you
So.
go. Council PTA has been.
So are you doing that, Jennifer?
Yes, Terry
Okay.
and I.
Okay, perfect.
Council PTA has been Meg and I. I'm happy to stay. I love that one.
Yeah, I'm great.
Unless anyone
Is
wants
that
to.
the fourth Tuesday or
So
They
that-
they meet right now with this school year. It's the executive meets on Friday.
Second Friday and
And
then
then
the PTA presidents
it's
are
a
the third Wednesday.
So it's two meetings a month.
Yeah.
I will say, there are Fridays that I work. Has that been a problem, do you think?
No,
I feel like
'cause
we've been
that's
able
why
to
there's
tag
two
team
of
it,
us, yeah.
So, if you
Great.
feel like you want someone that's.
the second Friday and then?
And then the third Wednesday.
Wednesday.
And that's always at 9:30,
Both of those.
so that makes it easy.
All right, caps. Lisa.
Do we need to have someone?
I'm doing a not great job on there.
I don't know if that's necessarily something that board member needs. I don't know.
I like
We've all
hearing,
been
I
on
like
it.
hearing about it, but I haven't,
just-
again, I can't go to the meetings often because my work.
Right.
Those are monthly too,
When are
right?
the meetings, Lisa?
They used to be monthly at noon, but then they kind of shifted around this past few months. I feel like they haven't been always at the same time.
Do you know what day?
Let me look.
I'm wondering, Daryl, could you go to the CAPS meeting and then report back, or do you mind doing that? Okay.
Do you want a board member as well?
I don't know that
I
it's,
haven't
that it's
been on
necessary.
that board, like in those meetings. It was more for like as we were getting it going. It was more for the organization of it. And now it's like.
Okay, I'm gonna take it off then.
Yeah.
Well, like last time I thought I could be there, I didn't know I was coming, and then
All
I
right,
had
Lisa,
students
we're
later.
taking it off. Don't worry.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
would-
You
I would-
advocate for them all the time, Lisa. I think you're
I
doing
would
great.
like for them to let us know if there's something they're doing, they really want a board member, please have them
You got
reach
it.
out,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
we'll make sure someone makes
Yeah,
it to that.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, our MTech representative.
I would like to stay on that.
I hear no objection to that, so okay, great. Awesome. Parent advisory group, we talked about having a board member attend to observe and
Yeah.
such. Yeah.
And when would that be?
We haven't decided that yet, but it's gotta be in the evenings,
I
so
could do
it's
that.
gonna be because we wanna make sure that we can get as
What
many
if we had
parents.
two board members on there so that then they can alternate if they need to, or they can
That's
show
a good
up or
idea,
something.
that's a good idea.
So Lisa, would you like to do
Yeah,
that?
I would.
And then
Cause we also have the Citizens Connections Committee,
that one we weren't going to have a board member.
so it's the opposite, so the
Oh.
Citizens Connection is the one that has the board members and the parent advisory is just with district leadership,
Oh,
but
okay.
but I'm
Yes.
But I'm wondering,
No, we talked about the citizens one is they're
That's right.
studying stuff to bring back to the
I
board,
do
so we
remember
don't
that.
want
You
board
wanna be there.
members
I
in the
do
room.
remember that now.
Yeah.
I'm mistaken, I apologize. Okay, so we
Okay.
don't need to worry about citizens connection, that's my staff that worries about that.
So that's what you said, Emily?
said she could do parent advisory, or Meg, I've heard Piyush express interest in that.
Yeah, I mean, but I think it seems like it'd be great time for Emily, so I'm fine with not doing it too. But happy to do it, but
I'm fine not to do it too. I'm just saying, evenings are, I'm the hard one here to be like, I can't do that, but I could do that.
Let's give it to Emily then.
Okay.
I saw that. Is she on that? Good job.
You guys are cracking me up.
All right,
Keep up
our
with her.
PEA PSP liaison committee.
Wait, what is that?
I've been doing that, but I
That
enjoy
works
it,
with
but
the
also.
association.
I've been doing
We're
that.
both
So
classified
it-
and
Yeah.
I missed the last one
teachers.
though.
But
Yeah.
the one the board member goes to, it's like twice a year.
It's just twice a year.
And it's great to get to hear
It's a great meeting,
from
yeah.
our association leaders
Yeah.
what's going on and stuff, so. And it's after school hours.
It's usually like 3:45.
Yeah, 3:45 to 5.
Yeah, 3:45 to 5 on a.
Will be nice.
All right, who would like to do that?
I can stay on that one, but.
I'm happy to pick that one up because it's less frequent, but it's also in later for the two of you.
Okay.
It's later.
Meg and Gina.
Well, I heard Emily too.
Oh,
Oh, it's fine.
Well, have Emily.
Later's hard for you, Gina, right?
Well, yeah.
Lisa, do you wanna keep that one, Lisa? Maybe you.
I'm happy to stay on
Lisa,
that.
How
I'm
about-
happy to do it.
Or
Cause that's later too, so.
Either way.
So Emily and Lisa?
Emily and Lisa.
Emily and Lisa, okay. I'll let them know the 11th.
We just need to make sure, Jason, that, and Christy, that meeting's on a Tuesday or Thursday, then instead of a Monday or Wednesday, cause Monday or Wednesday you're not available till 4, right?
Right.
Okay.
Remind us.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I'll,
we can do that.
okay.
Okay, our positive school culture committee. I've been doing that and happy to keep doing it.
When does that meet?
It is the first Tuesday at 1, 2?
2, no.
I'll have to check my calendar out in just a second.
2. 2 o'clock, 2 to 3, first Tuesday.
You're it.
Okay, great.
She's like.
I don't know if I named this right, our human sexuality group.
I'm currently on that. I'm trying to stay.
When do you meet for that one?
It's also twice a year. We just had ours in October maybe, and then again like in April maybe. We the April one's like almost like a review, and last time it was like a review of statistics and whatnot.
Is it still
And then-
online?
Yes, it was Zoom. And you would meet more if there was like a group that wanted to present, and then we review that curriculum and make sure it aligns with the standards. So, but in my experience, there's 2 standing meetings, fall and spring, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
let's
then
leave you there,
they'll send
Meg.
the email.
That's good because we're approving that committee, so it would have
Yes.
been a problem to change that, so thank you.
Yeah.
Then we would have to
Sorry
wait,
about
and then we
that.
would have to wait one more,
Yeah.
to the next meeting.
All right, and then we're gonna, well, we've talked about adding a committee for the next phase of the Timpview High School construction, so we can have some, like a formal way to have some eyes on the process and make sure we catch things and all of that, so, 3 board members?
I'm happy to be on that.
Okay.
Second that Just depends on when they meet. I would love to go to that. I'm not very flexible, so.
Well, I don't know that this one needs to be at a specific time
Is that
of the
too much
day,
for you?
because it really is just, probably the contractor, the architect, and
Yeah.
our staff who
Okay.
would be.
Well, let's say Melanie, Lisa,
I'll do it. Well,
a Lisa/Meg in case Lisa can't go, then
Yes.
Meg can go.
Meg, you wanna be the alternate?
Sure.
And then, it's okay if I'm the third?
Jennifer, there's a lot of pink square rectangles.
This one's important.
I agree that they're all important.
I have thoughts.
Well, there might be,
Just so that
you know,
Erin knows, he
another
is
construction
also part of that
committee,
committee,
so.
he's not listening to me right now.
What did you say, Terry?
There might be
She's the
another
energizer
construction
bunny,
committee
she can
with
do it.
like
That's true.
Dixon
Do we
and.
wanna have
That's true.
just a construction committee, or do we wanna break it up?
When we were doing Wasatch and Shoreline at the same time, where you had them as two separate, like, different, there was one or two board members that went to both, but, like, we did customize it.
Okay.
Do we-
So when we do that for Dixon, then we wanna do the same.
Yeah.
Do we wanna, that's all for east side, do we need a west side on there?
Meg?
I count, cause I'm middle of the city.
That's true.
She's kinda mid.
I'm mid.
She straddles the line.
I do. And I have kids in west schools and east schools, that works. But I don't
Okay. Gina, if you want,
But
I'll
if you wanna
drop
do
off
it.
and let you do it.
Yeah, do you wanna do it?
Wait, who's on there now?
So you're
That's
fully
me.
in?
I've got you, me, and Lisa. Who, are we having?
Meg is
And
the
then Meg and I
backup.
are-
Right.
So it's Lisa/Meg, so it's Melanie, Lisa, Meg, and Jennifer, all east side, but I do wonder if we need, cause one of my things has been, I don't know that the west side construction and the east side construction get the same consideration. I think we've done better, but I think there's been some things that
Then
have
you,
been
sounds
missed.
like you should do it, and I'm happy to step,
Yeah, you be the alternate.
I'll be the alternate.
I'll just be alternate.
Or Meg could be the alternate, either way.
I could be the.
So put
So it'll be
put
Gina.
Gina/Meg, and then Melanie and.
We'll just creep closer back to the
And then
east, so
you and I
Gina, then
creep.
me.
No. We'll be Leg. Lisa and Meg.
I just think it's important, so when we have
I agree.
Dixon,
No, that
I would
makes
like
sense.
an east side board
I
member to
agree.
be
No,
on the
that's a good-
Dixon,
It'll
whatever happens
probably
to
be
Dixon.
heavier as her doing the design.
I think it's easy to think, oh, these,
in the
they're
middle of-
interested
It
in
would
these,
probably
so
be no
make
more
that
than-
assumption of it.
Yeah.
All right, we've got already set our USBA board of directors, which is me, and our region delegate, which is Gina. And we do need to pick a district delegate for the delegate assembly on June 7th. We don't have to decide today, but since we're talking about this, if we're ready to decide, let's do it.
Who is not gonna be there?
I won't be,
I
I'll be out
won't
of
be
town.
I nominate Terry.
Yep.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Third,
I did it
fourth.
last time. I'm on LegCon, so I'm fine.
Okay.
Did you raise a frisbee?
Perfect.
Yes?
Never get over it.
Okay, good job, you guys.
You've gotta go, it's the best
These
thing
will
that
be our
happened.
committees for this year with the caveat that we are all gonna go home, and if after sitting on it, we're like, oh, wait a second, I really can't do a certain one I agreed to, or I really would love one I didn't agree to, communicate.
This isn't something we vote on.
No, it's not. In fact, the state code says one of the board president duties is to assign the committees. So,
I have a lighter
So
load on this than others, so please, if you need an alternate, you can't go to something, do reach out to me. I can sometimes find subs or whatever and go so I don't wanna knock them off.
but we all recognize we all have our lives as well, and so we give and take on the board, right? That's why there's 7 of us. But if you need to communicate with the board leadership, and we can always bring this back to change things at a future board meeting, right? If we need to, not a big deal at all.
With finance, we kinda need to say finance/audit because by law we have to have an audit trail.
Yeah, it is the finance/audit.
Thank you for catching that, Terry. And our student board members remain where they've been at,
I just
right?
wanna ask them how they're feeling about their
good,
assignments.
good.
Hutch.
Good.
Feeling alright about it? Wanna stay there? Wanna go?
I feel good.
Okay.
Okay, we love having you guys participate. All right, sorry Wendy, we are behind.
It's all right.
The one's I was in charge of, God.
That's all right.
Okay, we're gonna move to item number 7, graduation rate update.
I'll turn this over to Nate Mitchell, who is our Director of Research and Assessment.
Well, I had no idea how many committees you guys had. Thank you for all the work you do. That's pretty incredible. I hope, Bonnie, you got the link for the graduation rates. If not, we can Google it, I think, pretty quickly. There's the ESSER, I think, is what established kind of a federal graduation tracking requirement. And so the state of USBE has been tracking graduation rates, I think, since, what was it, 2008 or something like that, in reporting that back as a federal stat. These, I think, are important kind of things to understand. That these 4 bullet points constitute the denominator in calculating graduation rates. So the total population of graduating students, continuing students, the population of other completers, that's like GED kind of things. I think other completers also include adult ed. And then dropout. So you sum all those, that's the denominator. And so when we get down and look at some of the schools in our district percentages, you'll notice that they don't add up to 100, right? Because it's only talking about graduates and dropouts. It's not them showing the continuing students or other completers. So I just kind of described what's in that paragraph there. So if we could scroll down, I think it's page 7 is where we start to see the individual schools and districts. And I think we're maybe page 8 or 9.
Keep going down. Keep going, Bonnie. Keep going. Keep going.
It's 14.
14? I was way off. Samsonite.
Stop.
Okay, and I think we have a couple on the
What
previous
about that?
page as well.
Perfect.
So yeah, Provo City School District, and it reports our district rate. So you can see our dropout rate is sitting at 10, and then our total graduation rate is 87. And then it reports by school. Obviously, Independence High School has its own challenges there as it relates to graduation. Oak Springs typically doesn't have the numbers for us to report there. Provo High School, we did see a dip. It's tracking 2022, 2023, 2024 graduation rates, and then it only shows the dropout rate for the most current year. But we can see that there was a decline, and we're kind of pulling back up on the Provo High School graduation rates. With we feel like there's some clerical things that we can recoup as it relates to the way that students are categorized in that continuing ed category. We talked about how those aren't summed into the graduation rates. We think that there's some special ed students that have been coded just by default to go into adult ed when they're actually going to complete by October. So we do think that there's some clerical stuff in here that can clean up. Big shout out to our tech department that helped us kind of identify that. Our special ed team who worked really hard on that. We also we did have some increases in our graduation rates, and I want to another big shout out to our high school teams. We have counselors and teachers who are working hard during the summers to be able to continue to track those students who haven't completed yet but are trying to complete by October. So these numbers are from October 1 to October 1. Even though our graduation happens in the spring, there are still students that are trying to get credits across the summer. They have until September 30th to complete those, and then those go on our October 1 counts for graduation rates. But that's essentially how to read it in our Provo report for 2024. Is there any questions?
I had a question. With Slate Mountain, those kids, I don't know what the right wording is, they come and go so frequently. How do they even calculate that?
So if they appear in our October 1 count, they go into that denominator.
Okay.
And so then it's tracking where they go after that. So some of the clerical is really difficult, especially with a population like that, to kind of figure out where they go after they leave Provo. They don't always go right back into a school or anything like that. So part of the reporting is we have to be able to tag them to their district that they're going to, and that's sometimes difficult there as well.
Any other questions? No.
This is maybe more of a district question, but do we understand why we have like almost 12% dropout rate, like at Provo High, and it's not as high at Timpview, but like in our traditional high schools, why we see such a high number.
I would welcome some support on I'm fairly new to the district on this sort of a thing.
I do know there was some tracking challenges where as students left the school trying to determine where they have gone to or they have enrolled in other schools. That's been a challenge that I know that under Daryl's direction they're working closely with training the counseling staff, the registrars to ensure that we do a better job of counting where those students have gone. I think there's some low-hanging fruit clerically that we can recapture and account for those students who have left our system and enrolled elsewhere, as well as those students who we mentioned previously are continuing in our system and we've coded them inappropriately.
Because they may have gotten over to independence or something like that, or adult ed, yeah.
Adult ed is the most complicated.
There are also students who just aren't passing their classes, and I know that our principals are very concerned about just how do we get those kids, the students who are maybe non-attenders or are at the building but not going to class, and trying to find ways to get those kids engaged in the work. So I know there's been a lot of discussion at our high schools on just trying to get those students to complete credits.
I've been following a lot of what's been kind of in recently discussed in secondary ed and graduation rates and research, and I do think that our high schools, one of the good things I've seen this year with their improvement plans is when they talk about getting students enrolled in either a CTE pathway or an AP credit or concurrent enrollment. Those kids, if you can get them invested in one of those things, are more likely to graduate. Like that's one thing that really makes a big difference. And so I wonder about our communication, like a focus on improving our communication between 8th grade transitioning into 9th grade, and really helping parents and students see those options. I think we're doing that right now, but I do hope that that will help also find engagement for the kids who haven't really found a way that they genuinely feel engaged yet as a student, to keep them on track for graduation. And I think AVID is also really trying to address some of this, is that right? To help see some improvements. Honestly, I'd hoped that since we'd started AVID, we would see our numbers shifting up, but I think it just takes time, right? I mean, that's my understanding. But I would hope AVID would be another way to support finding ways that our 9th grade students, because really that I found in the past, at Timpview anyway, if they were on track at the end of 9th grade for graduation, we had a lot better path forward, but that first year is a tricky one. So
I think our high school principals, and Daryl can speak more to this as well, are trying to look at ways also to look at, is there an opportunity to provide some sort of bridge program for 8th graders that are going into 9th grade, so they had an opportunity to maybe earn some elective credit and get a little bit of a head start, and they felt more comfortable. There's some good research that shows that that can be really beneficial. It's just finding the money to actually do that, and then how are you incentivizing the kids to attend and what that looks like. I think there are some ways to go about that. I also know that we kind of have a little bit of the Wild West in terms of credit recovery and what that looks like at different locations, and we're working, John Anderson's really working with eSchool and with our high schools to kind of standardize what does credit recovery actually look like, you know, so that we don't feel like, well, if you have money, then you can go to this outside entity and get a bunch of credits, but if you don't have access to those resources, then you're stuck doing this other thing. So that would be consistent. When I've seen school districts that have higher graduation rates, that's generally because they have really streamlined the credit recovery process. And they'll also do credit recovery academies between 9th and 10th grade. Because if the kids are falling behind in 9th grade, then they can get caught up. And so part of this is just having the bandwidth to do all of the things. So, you know, figuring out what to prioritize there. So I think the first step is to make sure our clerical is right. I also think, to Nate's point, like when we're looking at slate, like does our registrar actually know the same tricks that our high school registrars know about how to track those students, and so are they getting credited to us when they shouldn't be, and what kinds of effects might that be having? Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Between that and the clerical issues, and it's also, I think when there were some changes on how they did credit recovery as well that year, as far as they took away the opportunity for packets that year as well.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things, a lot of factors that went into that drop that you're referring to, that it's kind of a perfect storm as far as communication, packets, and everything just kind of happened all at once. And they're aware of it, and they're trying to look for opportunities. I don't know if this makes sense, but it seems like high school students sometimes don't understand their opportunities until it's kind of too late, or until it's set right in front of them. So they're trying to find ways to get into the middle schools to do different career exploration, if you will, to let them know earlier kind of some pathways that are available to them to keep them engaged and give them a little boost in head start.
Part of what Daryl's describing there too is we haven't had a tracking system, and so it's been on counselors to know their entire caseload and all the schedules of each of those students. So we brought on Naviance to try to help us with that. We've also got some of the student analytics that we're going to try to build some of those reports out to help counselors be able to track a little better.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, there was something.
I had a question, Daryl. What's the student to counselor ratio right now, if you happen to know that at the top of your head? Is it more than 250?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's probably closer to.
Because I know the National Counseling Association says the best ratio is 1 to 250.
The other thing we've tasked John Anderson with is we technically are required to provide competency-based credits so that students can take exams and earn their credit by taking those exams. We haven't really had a pathway for that consistently to happen, and so he's been tasked with putting that together and what that would look like. We have a lot of kids that would, like, I don't want to take my senior year of English. If I can just test out of each quarter and then I can get another elective, that would be fantastic. And there are kids that absolutely have the capacity and capability of doing that. And so we need to be looking at what do those opportunities look like. And I know teachers get concerned about that because they think a ton of kids will start taking advantage of that. They really don't. They really do prefer to be in live classes with teachers and engaging with peers and that type of thing, but there are a group of students that do quite well in that, and then if we can get them into MTech or get them into more CE courses or CTE pathways, then I think they would find more relevance in their education and stick to it.
And we do have a competency policy, but our competency policy points to Granite School District's testing center, which no longer
exists.
takes out of district
So
students, so we need to revisit that. Yeah.
I would just love to hear from Hutch and Monica about graduation rates and what you see as students. Like, do you know students for whom graduation feels like they're not sure if they're going to make it, and what kind of supports, or when along the way do you think would be the best time to really, I mean, obviously, ideally we knew every student and how they were doing, but like, are there any important pivot points that you feel like students kind of make decisions towards graduation or feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, so in Student Advisory Council we actually had a discussion on this, and it started with how do we get students into classrooms, and then we realized they're not in the classrooms because they don't think that the class they're taking is necessary. So that brought it back to they're not on a CTE pathway, or they don't know the correct credits that they need, or they don't know the correct pathway that they should be taking. So then that also took it back to 8th grade, when the counselors came to our classrooms and we got like an hour to try to figure out our schedule, but all of us remember just like, okay, pick a math class, alright, pick a science class, and we just like circled papers, and that's all we really knew. So we decided that maybe in the 7th grade, going into your 8th grade, there would be a parent night where it's in English and then another night where it's in Spanish, so all parents could get a better understanding, and it kind of just walks them through that entire process of like this is this pathway. These are the credits that you should be taking. If you do this, then your senior year you only have to take this many classes. If you do this pathway, then you could take some college credit classes. But no one really knows that until they're in their freshman or sophomore year, and by that point it feels like it's too late. So then they're kind of just cramming their schedule with enough credits, and then you're taking the most random classes, and then everyone skips. So that's kind of just what we discussed in there.
I was thinking more along the lines of the counselors, what we were talking about, because especially start of semesters, it is crazy in the counseling center. I remember, I think it was my sophomore year, I just went to go in because I took an online class and they still had that in my schedule, and the earliest I could get an appointment was like the next week, like a Thursday. And like, so if there's, I feel like if we can kind of start there as a baseline, just with the counseling center, whether it's getting more or finding a better system where each student feels a lot more seen and they're able to get more face-to-face interactions with their counselor, where the counselor can better help them either stay on track to graduate, or I remember eighth grade year and freshman year, the counselor had like this like sit-down session with me and my mom, and they're like, hey, what's your career, what career do you want? And then I say it, and then they're like, okay, well, for that you should take this class. This class would be a good option, but it's optional, but you'll like definitely need this and this. So just like find a way to make sure that the students and counselors are seeing eye to eye, and it's not a student being like, oh, my counselor's just not really talking to me, so I guess I'll just take whatever.
Yeah.
Can I ask a really dumb question that I should know the answer to, being a superintendent? Do you guys have the opportunity at the high schools where there's a 2-week window where you can go in and manipulate your schedules at all? Or do you, if you're going to go in and do a class change, do you always have to go through a counselor?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's usually super chaotic, and they normally don't want you going if you have a class that period, even though you're trying to switch out of that class.
And it's actually changed over the
I don't
last.
have that split.
It's changed over the last few years. A few years ago, you could actually go online and
pick it.
and
They did that 1 year, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so and the
But once
idea
it was
being that
set, you
students,
still had to switch it with the counselor.
students who were choosing those things would have more buy-in to the schedule because they had helped set it. But then they moved away,
But
and
if
so it'd be
you,
helpful when you
but
were
if you talk to Martin Abelmovsky, he's the one that
Yeah.
did it at TSU, it was really hard to do the master schedule because so many kids were like, oh, I want this period with this time with all my kids. So it was really difficult to create the whole master schedule unless they just said, I want AP US History, so you pick the class but not necessarily the time or the teacher. So that they know these are how many students we wanted, and then they could fit it more of a master schedule.
All right, Gina, I'm going to start to wrap this conversation.
I had a parent contact me, I forwarded it on to Daryl, I think I copied you on it, but it was also an issue with counselors and and if this kid's parent wasn't like tenacious, the kid just wouldn't have graduated. So I worry that if I mean, it's not my place to get involved in that level of things, but I do worry if we have kids in the same situation where they're being told all different kinds of things, if they don't have parents, they're gonna go to bat for them if they're gonna just drop out. So anyway.
When I first was looking over this, the initial questions I want to come with are things like, well, we were focused on high school graduation rates. Why did it drop? What are we doing to focus on that again? And then I thought about our strategic plan and some of the conversations we've been having lately about some of the things mentioned today, right? Like our pathways and how are we going to get these students excited for what's in front of them. And I personally feel like these numbers aren't where we want them to be, but I think we're already focusing on the right things that are going to get us there. So, all right. Well, thank you, Nate, for looking at
Thank
today.
you. Thank you.
We are going to move on to number 8, which is our schedule of meetings for this next year. And have the chance to look at those ahead of time. The main one I wanted to bring up is right now on this tentative schedule, it has an all-day study session on Friday the 26th. And
Of September.
Yes, of
Okay.
September.
Okay.
You should all know exactly where I'm looking on my paper. Yes, September 26th. And I believe we have found out that the golf tournament is probably gonna be the day before that, right? Yeah.
They're trying, they haven't, I don't know if they confirmed the golf course
Okay.
yet or not.
So, last year that happened, that was really tough on, those of us, whether it was board members or, cabinet, who did attend the golf tournament, to have those two back to back. So do we wanna look at moving that, our all-day meeting to the Friday before, the 19th?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine with me.
Is that enough time between meetings for staff to, okay.
Yeah, I think that still gives enough time between our earlier September meeting.
So
10 days later.
So the 19th.
The 19th, September 19th. Okay, and then our March all-day meeting, March 28th, is the Friday before spring break starts. That is how we did it this last year. I don't remember that being a problem.
Is that gonna be a problem? Does anyone have?
One reason why we have it late in March is because we've waited for the legislative session to end so that Devin can start to get some idea of how that's gonna affect our budget, and then have time to be able to tell us something at that meeting related to that, right? So if we have a good reason, like we need to move it earlier, we can, but I think keeping it later is better for the budget reason.
It's fine for me, I'm not traveling, but
Okay.
The 28th, we don't generally get the numbers until spring break. So we'll only have.
We just have an idea of what
just
bills
have
we
an
know.
idea
Like
of
a
what we're
WPU
building
and
on, but we don't generally get our numbers until during spring break.
Okay. All right.
Are
there any other
meeting?
dates?
Well, that's my question. When are we meeting for NSBA?
The next week.
It's the following
Okay.
Thursday.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Thursday the
Yes.
3rd.
April 3rd.
So not the next day.
No.
Okay.
That would be horrible.
No, it's the following weekend, so, yeah.
Allison just panicked.
We usually start 8 to 3 or so, yeah.
It's a retreat.
That's what they used to call it.
Funny, they called it retreat.
All right, any other considerations for the calendar before we?
I didn't know, Bonnie, have you talked to the city council about the joint meetings? Are they okay with this May and?
That's what we have scheduled with them already. Okay.
They already did their calendar, so they asked us.
Earlier.
Okay.
All right. Then we will vote tonight to approve it with the change that we made for the September 19th. All right, moving on to item number 9, the board meeting data schedule.
Okay, Bonnie, can I take over the screen? Make this easier. Theoretically. Maybe that one. Yep, that's the one. Okay. So this is attached in board docs. It just got attached recently, so don't stress it if you haven't seen it. This is just a draft. We've been talking about what kinds of data reports do you want to see as a school board as it relates to our strategic plan? What do those check-ins look like? So we tried to go through and kind of look at what's laid out in the strategic plan and what those reports might be and what might be a good timing. Obviously there could be some flexibility depending on when data comes along. So I'll just highlight a few things here. So we were looking at February 11th. We've been administering a lot of our MOY data points, and so we could provide kind of just a snapshot of how the district is doing, with the expectation that then our principals need to go to their school community councils and to their faculties and share those MOY points of data. Most of our principals, especially at the elementary level, I think do like data dives once that MOY, that middle of year data come out, so that they can create an action plan. But just wanted to give a district-wide snapshot. With one of the policies that we're adopting as part of open enrollment, we wanted to provide some really transparent data for the board about which students are participating in which sports at which schools, how many transfers are happening, just so that we can see that by sport and by school. And so we would do that kind of after the season has ended or is coming to an end. So February would be our winter sports data report. We also thought about doing our early learning plan progress, because that has been in place. They've been doing those interventions. I believe they started those right before Christmas, if I'm remembering right, once they got those specific interventions in place, so just to kind of track that. Our strategic plan talks about an employee satisfaction survey. That's something that our team will be talking more about. I think several of us went to a USBA session where Logan did the Gallup survey, which is actually about an employee engagement survey instead of a satisfaction survey. So we've been talking about, do we want to use that or develop our own? But I think we need, wherever we have that, if we want to have it as early as March or we want to bump that back, but we need to make sure that we know how our employees are engaging with their workplace and things that we need to do to make things better for them. That's part of our stewardship of resources. And we have the SET data report, which goes along with our PBIS. The SET is the tool that we use to monitor our PBIS systems. Jared and Daryl and Jason are going out to all of the schools and gathering baseline data between now and February. So we thought we could present that at the all-day board meeting. And then what the schools are doing is they're going to be utilizing that data to put in a PBIS goal as part of their school improvement plans, to be looking at that and tracking that. And then on April 15th, as we're getting there for school improvement plans, we can look at some of the data that we provided to our schools so that you kind of have context for why the schools are submitting the school improvement plans that they are. So you're like, how come they only are asking for a 2% increase? And you're like, no, that really is a very difficult goal, you know? So to hopefully provide that context. At the end of April, we can pull our data on office discipline referrals, so we can start to use that as a base point to build our systems for the following school year. We would also have our spring sports data report. And then I also thought it would be helpful to have a CTE CE AP data report to see which students are completing those, and then kind of report on that periodically throughout the year. So kind of look at who's enrolled once we look at the fall, and then see how are we at retaining students in those difficult classes, or are they dropping out because we're not providing the right supports for them, and what kinds of resources do we need to provide for our schools there.
Would that help when a CTE report when we're making a decision about what to do with
I think so.
Dixon
Yeah. I don't know that we'll have all of because some of the pathways that we're intending to introduce we don't specifically have at this point.
Yeah.
But I think Clay probably does have some data of, like, if this class were offered at our school, this would have been a pathway that I would have been interested in. We could certainly look at those kinds of things as we're looking at the Dixon site. Also, baseline data for chronic absenteeism, Franklin Elementary update at the end of year, and then we'll have those periodically for next year. June meeting, end of year data report. I also thought it might be helpful to look at our end of preschool data and what students that are coming through preschool are ready for kindergarten. And then our strategic plan also has this piece of do our stakeholders feel that they're being communicated with effectively in terms of our decision-making processes. So that will give us a little time to, Caleb and I were like, I'm not exactly sure what we want to ask on that, but that might take us some time to figure out exactly how to get some of that information. Then moving into the fall, we do have to have our early learning plan approved by the state. We would then set our goals for office discipline referrals. To stop? Do I need to stop?
It says low battery.
Yeah, let's try this one. I'll stop for a minute.
I'll turn it off YouTube. Kind of my backup. Is that better?
Good job, Terry. I wouldn't even have noticed that. And then, anyway, just also giving a report on beginning of year data. Fall athletics participation. We will have our safety assessment reports are going to be due in October, so we could we can't give you specific details in an open meeting, but certainly that report could come in a closed session. Anyway, I just listed out some of those and just what else do you want? Yes.
Are we even allowed to talk about the safety in a closed meeting? Is that one of the requirements?
You can in a closed session. You can, but it has to be in a closed session. Yeah.
Do we need to ask them to add that to the?
No, it's already in there. It's already in there.
Okay.
You can, so. And I didn't know, Devin, when you wanted the audit report. I figured the November meeting, but
November's fine.
Okay, perfect.
We're usually done the end of September, so.
Okay. So we can move that. But is there other data that you're looking at that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe that you haven't talked about this? Or what I would love for you to do is to just look at this and then email me if there's additional data. Like this is a working document.
The only other one I would maybe suggest is like summer things like camping.
Oh, good idea.
And things that we do during the summer.
We did talk about that. Thank you.
One thing that I think would be super helpful eventually is to be able to print out annually our strategic plan with our baseline data and then our actual data, just so that we're really transparent about how we're doing with that, and we present that in a way that the public feels like they have access to it as well to see how we're doing, and then we could do a check-in about where we are and the kind of the whys behind kind of how we're adapting to that plan.
This is great.
This is
really awesome.
Okay. Well, if there are other things that you think of, I mean, nobody wants to do a whole meeting on data, so I thought, well, maybe we just get a little dose every meeting, you know, that might be helpful.
I think it's great. It keeps us on track with what we want to be doing,
Part of our
right?
goals is being data driven too.
And does this have everyone at some point of our kind of goals?
Yes.
It looks like it does.
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay, great.
Okay. Thank
So we
you.
wanted to make sure we were being accountable with all the things that we said we were going to
Thank
be
you so
accountable
much.
with. So. Oh, I know you guys are excited. It's policy time. Woohoo! I know you can hardly contain yourself. Okay. So I'm just going to go to the summaries of these. This is our second reading, so these policies are all coming up for a vote. On the open enrollment one is the one where we had some changes that policy committee recommended, and so I just wanted to highlight these. And so on the summary, I also just put these in blue so that you don't have to read through the whole summary again. We did add a definition of grade reconfiguration into the policy because it seemed like that was not clear in legislation what that was, and then added the clarification that there is a different definition for early enrollment when grade reconfiguration is taking place, because that seemed to be very conflated and quite confusing. Lines 110 through 136, we reordered those paragraphs in the hopes that they made a little bit more sense about when, I believe it's tied to the deadlines of when all of that enrollment stuff has to be turned in. And then lines 127 through 129, we indicated that the application for open enrollment must be completed online. And lo and behold, we also added a link to that because, wow, that's weird that we would be so helpful. And then lines 139 through 145, we separated this paragraph out regarding early enrollment if a grade reconfiguration were to happen, because it was all under early enrollment and I was confused. Like Lisa kept saying, so am I turning this in August 1st or am I turning this in December 1st? And so I think we got that clarified. And so we just, this replaces lines 151 through 156, which we eliminated there. And then I do want to point out on line 174, I think where it has the phrase which is here, and we were thinking, why would anybody let a person know like the week before school started that their application had been accepted? I think that's actually written in state statute, but we took it out because we still feel like that we have enough information that we can notify parents in a timely manner and put that into the policy. So down here with the charter schools, lines 365 to 392, that was super confusing language. Stuffed that into ChatGPT, broke it into 3 different paragraphs. I'm learning so much from Gina. And then
And her friend chat.
yes, and her friend chat.
Add that to your leadership.
So it talks about that a charter school student can enroll in their boundary school at any time if their charter closes. Like, we're not going to hold that student like hostage, right? That they don't have a place to go to school. If they are enrolling and they're trying to enroll after June 30th and their school hasn't closed, they can, unless the school is at 100% capacity and that greater level, then they would have to stay at that charter for the following school year. And then we took out the rules references because we've already defined those earlier in the policy as well as in the legal references, and it felt like it was just making
a question on that section. Do you want that right now?
Yeah, please, go for it.
So it does say available space. If it has available space, it's line 387, means the grade level or program has fewer students than the district's average. We kind of talked about this last time. Are we comfortable with that definition, or we wanted to say what our what we set is our capacity, right? Like our ratio. Because our average at the time might be different than, like we say we want 387. If we're saying we want 27 students per classroom, our average might be lower than that right now. Like,
oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, I think we usually just, the way that we set it, we might need to change the language in this. The way that we set it is basically what we have across the board. Like, it isn't like if for some reason 4th grade was smaller and then my class is at 22 and the student coming in is going to be at 23 and I'm going to deny them, we would never do that.
Yeah. Okay, so you're comfortable with that language?
Well, we might need to change the language if you want it to reflect that that's what we actually do, which is, yeah, and we should.
So just that paragraph could be rewritten to say, if the enrollment application is submitted after June 30th for the following year or for the current year, the student may still enroll in the district school grade program per course that has available space, and then just redefine available space, right? I mean, pick up a program.
But we can just say what we're
It's
going
deemed to have open enrollment capacity or something. You know what I mean? Because we've already defined
capacity elsewhere.
Yep.
There you go.
But we can just say, we can still vote, right? And just say what the changes
and just say what that changed. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then there wasn't anything that we changed in the procedure, so I just wanted to know if you guys had any questions about this policy.
I had a parent ask me about once they turn in the application, it's not editable unless they remove the application, and then it has to go to the bottom, and they have to start over again if they want to edit it. Does that make sense? Right. And so I don't know anything about this. I've never done this. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I just wanted to understand that, or is there a reason why it could be edited, or is there a reason why it shouldn't be edited?
We could probably make it, I think we could make it editable, but I would say if the parent has put it in before, and if we need to add language to this, we can, and then they're going in to edit it, so they're doing it again, I would just have them call student services and be like, by the way, I put this in, but I realized I marked something wrong.
Okay.
Can you just be assured of that? But we need to make sure that we're communicating that appropriately so that they know.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
that
instead
happened
of
to me with registration for
That's a great
preschool
point.
where a parent had applied and then later was like, oh, I wanted to add this thing to what I described, but it bumped them all the way down to the bottom of my timestamp list.
So I don't know if that needs to be reflected in this policy, but just that was something.
We can put it in the procedure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Just for, if you guys are buttoning things up to get it on line, in the procedure, line 103, we still have a conflict with the dates that don't match when the chart says April and the thing says March, or vice versa.
So I think we fixed that, and it's actually referring to two different things. So I think people thought that it was the same, and it's not actually saying the same thing.
Okay.
Let me pull it up though. I'll just double check that and make sure.
That, yeah.
Okay.
We don't need to.
Okay.
But maybe if they are, then we need to clarify because the wording looks the same to me.
Okay.
So.
I'll double check that. I think I was looking for it in the policy, and I might not have looked for it in the procedure, so that would fit that.
I had a question.
You bet.
Should we put the the link to the application in the, I don't know, policy or the procedure. I mean, it's really no good to have this policy.
It is
And then
there.
you have no way to.
It's linked.
It's
Already.
linked.
That's what was
It's
changed.
linked.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
linked.
It's linked in
We have
both.
linked it now. It wasn't linked before, it is linked
Okay.
now.
Now you're
And I
right.
actually changed the name of it too because it had this really weird name and changed it to like a normal name.
Good.
All right, 3160 student residency. There really were no changes that came through on policy committee on this particular one, but do any of you have any questions on this one? Really, 3160 and 4400 is about testing procedures. Those two policy committee didn't have. We just cleaned up any of the language or whatever, but it was just really coming back here for a second reading, and there was no commentary that came through on the website on those two policies, so that's what we were waiting for, and there's been
I
nothing.
did have a question on that one.
You bet. On 4400?
Yeah,
You bet.
so we're giving them the option to opt out of any of the tests at the beginning of the year. Do we already have a lot of people, like, is that already how we operate? Like but do they have to come ask us for that sheet, or do we hand that to all parents?
You don't hand it to
Okay,
them.
I
You're
was
not
like,
allowed
that
to have
looks,
those. Yeah, you're not
that
allowed
looks
to
like a
do
really
that.
bad
Yeah, no.
idea to do that.
No,
Okay.
we do not do that. So they have to come and ask for it or have to go look for it on the website to find that particular paperwork. So they would ask at their school, and then the school produces the copy
Okay.
for them. Yeah.
Okay, so this is just clarifying things we're already doing. This is
Yes,
not
yes.
new.
The only thing that got added on 4400 that came through state law was the fact that a student that's on a UTEP Fits All scholarship has the right to come in and test, and so created guidelines about what that looked like. So that's really the only thing that we changed, and then I went in and had Nate re-look at the actual opt-out forms because it had some of the wrong tests listed based on the update, so just made sure that that form was updated accurately and reflected what tests we actually did. So those are the updates in there. You bet. 4200 is our electronic device restrictions policy, and I only brought this forward because I wanted to create some clarification about the smartwatches and make sure that it is in language. So what we stated for the elementary use clarification is that cell phones, earbuds, and headphones must be stowed away in a backpack. Smartwatches may be worn but must be set to a mode where notifications cannot be sent or received, and they cannot be used to make phone calls during the day. And then the school is establishing the procedure for how the student can go to the office and get help in contacting the parent. I have no idea what happened to my computer. I must have. Sometimes it just kicks you. I know, sometimes it doesn't like me. It's rude. It's not personal. Dang it. It's just a collective group. And then middle school is the same thing, but we also put they can't use it to make phone calls. Added language on 116 to 118 about smartwatches being restricted when students are using a hall pass so that notifications on or phone calls cannot be sent or received. And then high school clarification, same thing. They can wear their smartwatches, they don't have to be in their backpack, but they can't be receiving notifications nor be used to make phone calls. Same type of thing, the smartwatches can't be used when they're going to the restroom, because it already says they can't take their phones. So anyway, we had some upset parents who absolutely wanted to make sure that the watches are staying on their kid because they were very fearful that their kid was going to forget to take them off. We have several principals that don't like that would like those watches to go in the backpack as well. So we're going to try it this way, see what happens, and if we need to make a restriction, further restrict the smartwatches, then we can do that.
But they're allowed, like if they find out that the student's been using the phone, the watch,
then
that
there's
they can,
consequence.
then they can
They
take
lock
it
it up,
just like
yeah.
anything else.
Absolutely.
Which is how they have to
Yes.
do it, right?
Yes, that constitutes a violation of the policy. So anyway, so I just wanted that because I had messed that up in the language, and so wanted to make sure that I felt like our discussions had gone one way and then the language wasn't reflecting that. So any questions about that? All right, more policies. Jared's up. He's going to talk about safe routes. Which one do you want to start with, Jared? I'll start wherever you want. 75.
70/50.
70/50? All right.
So recently in our policy committee, we were reviewing policy 70/50, a couple of procedures actually. And procedure 2, this is related to school community councils. And in this procedure, it spells out some of the roles of the school community councils to develop the Utah Safe Routes to School map, where each school will go in and identify the safest routes for students to bike or to walk to school. As part of that, they also make recommendations for infrastructure changes to the city. And in this procedure, we also had information that was related to how they could identify a hazardous route. We removed that from this procedure and actually moved it over to the transportation policy series of 6600. And so I wonder, Superintendent, so just to clarify, we simplified 70/50, that procedure, and we've moved some of that information here to policy 6600, which is the series that covers transportation, to talk about where these hazardous bus routes, how we go about them. During the policy committee meetings, we've had discussions about how do we determine a hazardous route, and this is our effort to identify that. And what we've done in here is we've identified sort of a quasi-rubric of considerations for when we might identify a hazardous route, that then as a school district we would provide funding to transport those students safely to and from school. And we've added a few things in here that this would be screened from a traffic safety committee. So backing up, a school community council will identify some things that are hazardous. They then will make a recommendation. It would then funnel through a district's traffic safety committee using these criteria here from lines 24 through 36.
Can I ask a question? Who constitutes the district traffic safety?
We would have our director of transportation, myself, 1 to 2 administrators. We could have another committee for a board member, but in our conversation, there were some recommendations from the board members that perhaps we not have a member of the board.
Sorry, if anyone feels differently, speak up. I just felt like they could come to us after, because they're bringing it to us.
That's correct. They're going to bring that recommendation to you. And so a couple of things.
What about adding like Vern from the city?
Yeah, Vern will be a part of that traffic safety committee as well. Okay, thank you. Provo City Engineering representative will be a part of that committee. In essence, they're going to look at the type of hazard. They're going to potentially go physically inspect it, or at least use the street view of Google Earth so we can inspect that. We'll compare that with Provo City Engineering as to what plans they may have for future efforts to resolve that concern. We'll identify the number of students that will be affected by it. We'll determine the cost of that transportation. Is there availability? We'll consult again with the Provo City Engineering. In some cases, you're currently paying for a few hazardous routes that a resolution actually has occurred. And so another purpose of this traffic safety committee would be to evaluate future requests and existing requests to determine if we still need to provide that. That committee will make recommendations to you as a board, and you would vote on the approval of those hazardous routes in an open meeting. And at the same time, that committee will review those previously approved routes and make recommendations to you to perhaps no longer provide them if it's no longer necessary. And then we would give ample notice to patrons that that change would be occurring at some point. Policy or procedure 6600 P4 introduces a concept of space available busing, where if we have buses that are running under capacity, we could make that space available to patrons on a sign-up basis, that they would be allowed to ride those buses. And this procedure sort of spells that out. The idea, though, is that we give notice to the community before the school year begins, that there may be some space available. They could sign up for it. They would learn by September 15th if they could qualify for that space available busing. We also spelled out that bus capacity could be different at different levels. A high school bus versus an elementary bus may look different just because of space constraints. And at all times, the transportation director has to hold space on that bus for students that reside in that boundary, even if they don't ride. And that's just one of the things we wanted to make sure was clear in here. But this is our first attempt that beginning next school year, if we have buses that are under capacity, we would make space available busing available to them. Any questions about these 3 procedures?
I have a quick
Meg?
question. We briefly touched on it in policy committee meeting, but remind me on the hazardous bus route, the April timeline at the April board meeting to identify hazardous routes. Could that be any sooner, or I'm trying to remember the rationale of April. Just trying to give parents ample time. And I guess in my mind, I think that's probably plenty of time, but to some parents that might not be. That might seem short notice for the next school year.
Correct.
So
And so
I'm curious
the
about
mindset
that.
was really, as Meg is asking, why do we choose April as the time frame? If we're going to no longer provide a service, we want to notify them by April so they will be prepared for the upcoming school year. Perhaps we could change that date. I don't know that there's any reason we couldn't do that sooner, other than the city, just if we know that there's a resolution coming, perhaps.
Yeah,
it's
that's
sort
what I
of-
wonder. It gives us more time to have more information on that route through a school year as opposed
Correct.
to in the middle of the year.
And just as a reminder, school community councils typically, they'll complete their safe routes maps and maybe make these recommendations by the end of November.
Yeah.
And so that's really not a big significant amount of time. I'll meet with the city at the end of November or early December. We'll review all of the requests. Vern has given us information back on all of the requests and hazardous areas, and we've shared that back with principals to now give to their school community councils. But that took us right up until the end of December before we had that information.
Yeah, that's helpful. And then one last question about the rubric. Do you foresee us weighting these different criteria, or?
We hadn't considered that. If that's
Yeah.
feedback you'd like for us to take back, I'm happy to consult with our transportation director. and
Yeah,
a
I'm
few
curious
things
if that will be something that may come up for communities. Okay, how we have these guidelines, then what takes precedence over the other, or is it just dependent on all the different factors?
And I apologize, I don't
situation?
have the data completely memorized, but earlier this year, our transportation director, Troy, came and shared with you information of the number of routes, the number of minutes, et cetera, et
Yes.
cetera. And there's a significant investment right now, and perhaps those are still needed and warranted.
Right.
But I think this is the first time we've begun to formalize a process to evaluate that.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. Thank you. I really appreciate all your work on this. I think
Okay,
it'd be
and
great
again,
to
these
have.
procedures, if there's additional feedback that comes to you later, please reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you. And then our other first reading.
Here we go, other first readings. Let's go, I'm just gonna go to the summary. I put the summary of all of these. So policy 1100 is about board member elections and redistricting. Thanks to Gina for working with the board members to get this worked out. So we changed the word reapportionment to redistricting because that's the word that's more commonly used with us. And clarified in lines 18 to 20 that elections are run by Utah County and that the state legislature determines filing deadlines. We've had several people being frustrated, like, why aren't you advertising this? You run these elections. It's like, actually we don't. That's not how this works. So just clarifying that, and that they can contact the Utah County Elections Office for information. Line 25, we changed the number to align with our district. 32 through 34, we added language required by state law that reflects that new school districts can be created and what that does. And then 48 to 51, Gina did a good job of clarifying that language because the policy committee thought that was quite confusing what was there prior in the model policy. Questions on 1100? 1200 is fiscal responsibilities. This is a new policy. This is coming from a model policy from USBE, but we have not had a separate policy for this. I do think it's important to note, and Devin brought this up as well, in line 12, fiscal policies and procedures, when it's tied to these fiscal responsibilities of the board, have to be approved on and voted by the board. Procedures that are dealing with administrative things tied to students or things like that, but when it's tied to money, it's important that you're voting on both. This was a question that I had, lines 57 through 62 discuss having a hotline for posting information about fraud. We do have an online form that is on our business and finance page, and I put the link there. It actually will pull up the form that you fill out. It doesn't have an email or a phone number. So I started looking at other districts to find out what they do. So Canyons had nothing. Salt Lake District directs people to USBE or to their, apparently they have an investigations and compliance department. Alpine District just directs people to student services or USBE. Uinta District directs people straight to USBE. So I figured on that form we could just add the hotline to the audit people at USBE. That seems to be sufficient to fulfill that requirement. And then add the email and phone number there, and we could still keep our online form as well. So if you are amenable to that, this will still go through a second reading. So,
Quick question, on our online form,
Yeah.
where does that land?
That's a
Like,
great
who would take
question.
care
Where
of
does
it?
that go,
Yeah.
Devin?
It's me.
Okay, so it can't go to you. I
Well,
don't
it
think.
goes to tech.
Oh, that's
So
right.
it goes
Okay.
to technology, and then they will inform us of what
That
we
there's
need
been
to-
some sort of report.
Okay, and then I guess.
Eventually it comes to us because we have to do the investigation for it.
So okay.
But isn't the purpose of this so that there's a way that the public can say, I'm uncomfortable about what I think is happening here, and not have it go
Yeah,
to
so that's
district
Yeah,
employees
yeah,
at all?
but that's why we
Right.
could have it go to USBE.
To USBE.
Yeah. So if we want to even pull,
but
I'm sure she
not
would
to
be
the
fine
board.
if this were pulled off.
What this form was intended to do is if an employee noticed that another employee was
I see.
perpetrating fraud. So that was the purpose of
Okay,
this
that's
form
what
to
we know.
begin with.
Okay.
So this was not this is
Different.
not what's required by the state. What's required by the state is really to have the link to the state on
Okay,
there,
that
because
makes sense.
parents use that to do their
All sorts of
their
things.
and then when the state gets a complaint, they send us the pertinent information and we respond to that,
I see, that makes
which is
sense.
what is required. This has been used in the past, and we have had to go out and conduct investigations into the suspected fraud or what they were thinking was fraud. But that was what this
Okay, that's
was.
helpful.
The original intention of this was
So
to
one of the things we'll want to do, Shauna and Caleb, is make sure that we get this on the front page so that people can just go to provo.edu and that we have a link to USB's information.
So
that
it's
we
not,
can do
in
that.
fact, then a board hotline, because a board hotline to me implies that there is a way to file a complaint that we know
It
about.
goes to USBE, and then
So
USBE
they would notify
sends
the
the
board.
email to
Okay.
board leadership.
Perfect.
So it is a
Okay.
board
So it does
hotline, but it
go-
bypasses the district
Perfect.
entirely so
Okay.
that we're not
Sorry.
doctoring that
Correct.
information.
Okay.
No, those are important questions.
So when
I do-
we've had that information before, when we've had people send in complaints, it's gone to the board, who then
Leadership, it goes to
it goes to
Rebecca.
the board and to
Okay,
the
great.
district
That's
person
what I
that
just
it
wanted
would
to make
be,
sure.
like school fees, and it does go to the board so that they know and are aware.
Okay, great, thank you.
So in this reading of this policy though, it does specifically say hotline should be independent from district administration. So if we're gonna keep that form, that doesn't feel like that meets that.
It does
So
not, it does
we
not.
just need to clarify that that form is a different purpose, or it's not meaning that, like that this one goes to the district, and
I
if you
think
wanna
we could-
report
We could
somewhere
probably
else.
take this one off.
Okay.
And then have the link be to the State Board of Education. That probably would be clear. This one was specifically asked for when there was some suspected fraud. Somebody wanted to report it and couldn't do it anonymously.
And now the state
So,
has.
and now the state, and then the state came in and required a board hotline. That board hotline being to the state, where that's what the other districts do, is they have that be the hotline.
Our independent.
And then it doesn't have to have anybody in the district involved in it, so no one would know about it until the board knows about it.
Any other questions? Okay, and then policy 1430 is about public input in board meetings. Really is, we updated the language so that it asks for the elementary school boundary, because that's what our practice has been. Instead it said to state the address where you live, and it just makes a lot more sense to make that align with our practice. The model policy is really asking for a suggested time frame for public comment, and that it's documented in the agenda. It doesn't mean that you have to take that full amount, but that you can't, if there are more people here to provide public comment, you can't cut it off early. So so we had this for at least 30 minutes, but no more than 1 hour. That was kind of what we thought was the recommendation from policy committee, simply because I think sometimes when we're dealing with some really hot button issues, like boundaries could be a really hot button issue, or you know, truth in taxation, or you know, all of those have their own requirements around it, but there could be some decisions made, or about the Dixon site, or things like that, and so just being mindful of that, but certainly is up for discussion to change that time frame. And then I did like, I just wanted to point out on line 74 that line does align with our current practice, which is we have scheduled separate meetings based on specific topics where we're seeking input, and I think that's been really super helpful, so that people get information and then they have an opportunity to process it. Yeah. Any thoughts on the 30 minutes to 1 hour piece, or?
I think, yeah, up to the 1 hour piece.
My only thought is it does say the agenda will specify. So right now we're not doing that, so we would just need to find a way to do that. And I guess if we're specifying, then we have to decide. Is it 30 minutes or no?
So
maybe a regular meeting could be one, maybe a different.
Now I'm thinking, do we have to sit there for 30 minutes in silence?
That's not how I read it.
No,
Yeah, that's not
no,
how I read
it's
it.
up
Okay.
to.
Yeah.
But if there's 5 hours worth of public comments in the room, we say, sorry, our limit today is this, so get together in groups and have spokesperson come.
That's right.
But if there's only one comment, then we move on as soon as that
That's correct. I will do some checking to make sure that it's not that it has to sit open. I will double check that too. You seem to have a little bit of a concern, so I'll figure it out.
I sat through a JV girls basketball game where they stood there and did nothing instead of playing basketball, and I don't want to do that again.
Oh, because they specified a time?
I think we just have to
No,
make sure how we
because the refs didn't make them play. But yeah. I don't want to have that kind of experience.
No, nobody wants that kind of experience. That's terrible.
And it might be that also, as we know kind of what is on our agenda, et cetera, that we can
Yes.
go ahead
For
and
that
sort of say,
agenda, yeah.
because I don't think if we've specified 15 minutes on an agenda, but then comments are going longer, we would
Stick to the 30.
stay to this policy that allowed them more time,
Yeah.
even similar to how we go over time on other agenda items. Yeah, we just go over time on that agenda item, so.
Up to our max,
Up
right?
to.
Yeah. Okay, so those will come up, we'll put those out for comment on our website, and then they'll come up for a vote. So, all right, Devin, you're up.
And
do you need the screen?
Nope, she only put us 7 minutes behind. We were like 20 minutes.
Yes,
behind.
you got us.
So way to go. So just a quick update to Wasatch. Tomorrow's the day. So this
It's really
weekend,
exciting.
we went through the move. The move went really, really well. We had kudos to maintenance and technology who had people up at the building on Monday and Tuesday helping the teachers make sure everything was connecting and everything was set up and that things were moved. We're dealing with some furniture requests and some issues there, but that will take longer than tomorrow. So we'll keep working through those issues. The Wasatch surplus sale will be Thursday and Friday for the public, so they'll be able to come through. It goes from 8 to 4 those 2 days. They can come in and look and see if they want a chair from their classroom or whatever they're looking for. And then we'll spend the week after that, we'll spend the rest of that week disposing of all of the stuff in the school. We have 30-foot construction trailers back in the back that they will load up and take to the dump. And then BYU will take ownership of the school at that point. So we're excited. It'll be, I'm hoping, it went surprisingly well the last month and a half of construction. All of our inspections passed. The people are, the teachers that have been working with our technology and maintenance staff have been thanking our staff for the new building and the new space that they're able to enjoy, and so I think it'll be a good day.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I went up this morning, and I will just share this now. It sounds like Ruth Ann, Principal Snow, and her team were so well organized that the movers did say, if you had not been as organized as you were, we would not have been able to do our part on schedule. So kudos to their team for they had all their pallets outside of their rooms, ready to go on Friday, and I think
and they have already packed most of those boxes
they got their
for the moving company to come pick up.
They'd be out by 10 this morning, I think.
It was pretty amazing the amount of work that those teachers did to make that happen. So I think it took a village on this one.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. All right, we'll now move on to our update on the questions we had in December. We talked about should we become a vendor for the Utah Fits All scholarship program or not, and we had a lot of questions that Wendy and Devin and their teams worked on for us, and so today we're going to get some updates and then discuss. So turn it to Wendy.
Yeah, so one of the things that we had originally stated in Utah Fits All was wondering about our student information system and whether or not that then had to be created in kind of this separate housed area, and talking with IT, they stated that they can actually do this by turning off a button so it doesn't report to the state, so it didn't, so I just wanted to make sure that I was accurate and that it's not as overwhelming as it seemed. There could still be parents that are frustrated that somehow we're still kind of putting kids into our SIS system, just not reporting it to the state. So we're still getting reports on that kid, it's just not going to the state. So that data is resting with the district. We can't do a workaround on that piece. That is something that they would have to be okay with. The other piece, you know, we should be able to enter grades. It should be manageable, basically. I do want to let you know that at our USBA conference, the vendor that has been chosen to administer the Utah Fits All is now on its third manager. The information is not being shared readily between school districts and this oversight company. I spoke with a superintendent from one of the districts down south, and he stated that he couldn't ever get information whether a parent was on a Utah Fits All scholarship. So if they came in and just said, oh, I'm not on one and I just want to enroll, then he has concerns that there's some dual enrollment happening as well as Utah Fits All, and that there's been no
you can't go look that up anymore.
No. Well, I can call them, but they don't return phone calls. So they're not super responsive. So you can call and say, hey, does this person have a Utah Fits All? But we're finding out that this vendor isn't extremely responsive to school districts.
The one thing that with that I did find out is if they come in and are enrolled in the SIS and are starting to be reported, they actually automatically rescind the Utah Fits All scholarship from the student, and then the parent freaks out because they no longer have access to that money. So there's been some issues with that, with the that enrollment.
It's easier if they're coming in for a class that's happening within the school day. Like that's going to be easier to verify. If they're coming in for an extracurricular activity and we're trying to say we want to charge an administrative fee for someone who's on Utah Fits All, they can just say, I'm homeschooled, I'm not on a Utah Fits All, so I just have to pay what's already posted. So that becomes problematic in that I don't want to sit and try to figure out if this person's telling me the truth, not telling me the truth. And students that are homeschooled do, by state code, have access to all of the things that our schools offer, and we have to offer it at the same rate. But Utah Fits All allows us to charge an administrative fee and charge different rates based on that. And so
But there's not like a spreadsheet that you can go in and type in, that's how you know.
That has not been made available as of yet. That has been a concern that the Superintendent's Association and UASBO have communicated with the state, but they have not been able to secure a successful vendor as of yet to like run that particular program.
And they even have a difficult time with the vendor that is providing payments to the district.
That's correct.
So that there are a couple of issues in some of the responses that I got from districts.
So Devin pulled this information. Do you want to speak to this?
Yep. So Nebo, Alpine, Tool, and Canyons are the 4 who are currently
close to us.
That are close. I did the school districts that were in the same valley as us, and then a couple of the ones up in Salt Lake, and then Ogden because they're closest in our size. Nebo has 5 students, Alpine has 26, Tooele has 7, Canyons has 10. All of them talked about the administrative burden. They felt like the $1,000 per credit was not enough. But to do more would be a little bit difficult. Both Nebo and Alpine do not allow for elementary schools. And then Alpine has a limit to 2.5 credits per semester. The Tool actually has a lot of fees that they charge with theirs. So they charge an administrative enrollment fee for each of their extracurricular, plus a transportation fee, plus any kind of extra fee that is involved, plus they will also charge for special ed, for testing services. And then Canyons, especially where they're just 10 students, they said it just doesn't feel like it's worth. They're not getting enough benefit for the administrative burden for it. Jordan, Ogden, and Salt Lake were all very adamantly opposed to it, so none of them have elected to become vendors. I won't use the words they used.
Good filter. I just wrote here too some other considerations just to think about. If we allow elementary to participate in after-school activities, which you totally could, you could just say, you know what, we feel like that this is just like a homeschool student and this is their neighborhood school and they have the right to participate. Are there going to be parents that then push for it for athletics? And at that point then, because you are charging for some fees and now you're going to have a registrar that's following an affidavit that comes from a parent that says, yes, I actually do meet extracurricular, I do meet all of the eligibility criteria, that's just going to be an added administrative issue there. The other piece of this is many of our after-school programs do require us to keep data because they are funded through grants. So the students do have to be registered at some point. So there is some subsidizing that happens through that grant money. Even if the student is paying for it, we're often subsidizing it through a 21st Century grant or other types of programming or a partnership with Boys and Girls Club. And so if that student isn't an enrolled student, then we're not ever getting the WPU from that particular individual. And that's true for a homeschool student as well, I understand that. But we would be subsidizing that individual. So it just seems, for some it feels like a little bit unfair that this individual doesn't want to participate in our school system, yet we're subsidizing that educational piece. If then we have to identify a different pay rate, that does create this weird anomaly between a homeschool student versus Utah Fits All. It becomes a lot on the honor system as to how that's going to happen, especially if the parent doesn't want to use the Utah Fits All scholarship to pay for it. They're just going to pay out of pocket. That's taking up the space from potentially a Provo City School District student. So I just can see both sides. There's just, anyway. So our next steps would be to determine if this is something you would like to do and in what capacity. Is this only secondary? Is it only elementary? Is it only extracurricular? And then I would send the responsibility to policy committee based on that view as to make a policy and a procedure that aligns with that philosophy. Then that policy committee would send it back here and it would be something that the board would formally vote on and implement. And in my mind that's going to take some time. These are some concerns too that I would like to bring up with legislators to just say there needs to be some cleanup in this bill because it's creating some weird dynamics that I don't think you're aware of. Or there needs to be at least a forced communication of I get a list of the kids that qualified for the Utah Fits All Scholarship, and I should at least be able to start there. What we are finding is that a lot of the students that are using, this is what superintendents are reporting, that are using Utah Fits All already utilize private schools or are already homeschooling. And so, anyway, if that amount of money, if that money goes up in amount, then that might change. So, anyway, the idea would be then we could have a policy and procedure that would go into effect for the next school year.
What are the chances that the state legislature is going to require every school district to take on?
I haven't seen a bill about that, but if they did, then we could develop that policy at that point in time, and it wouldn't go into effect until maybe May 7th or June 1st or July 1st, depending on which date that bill writer decides to pick for that particular bill.
I'm just going to voice my opinion based on the numbers of our neighbors. This is going to be a small enough number that I don't know if it's worth it to deal with this right now.
Quick question about this. I was under the impression that someone taking the Utah Fits All Scholarship could actually access any vendor, so they could access something in a different district. But recently something came up, I think it was a communication that was like, no, you can't, you're not in our district, you have to go try to get it from Provo or something.
Depends on if that vendor has put up some firewalls with that and said we're a vendor for only the people in our district. I don't know if that's going to hold up. I haven't seen that in the legislation yet, but that's what some of the districts are doing.
Okay.
I think that becomes a problem when you start dealing with school choice though, so I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I think
well,
if a parent really pushed back on that, I think there could be
Because you can, as a homeschooled student, you can actually school choice into after school activities anywhere as a 9th grade student.
So
correct?
Technically no, as a homeschool student it states specifically in Utah law that you can only choice in if you're a homeschool kid and you've signed the homeschool affidavit into your boundary school. It's all, but on Utah Fits All you can go to any vendor.
Why is the first thing true if that's not, if we have a school choice open enrollment?
Kids who are
for kids going, for kids enrolled.
So
but
I don't
for
know
a homeschooled student trying to
access
after school.
I don't know if it's for elementary schools, but UHSAA has a specific rule about athletics.
I did not know that.
Because and thinking, if the thinking goes right, like so if we don't offer we aren't a vendor, students in our district in theory could access these opportunities at Nebo or Alpine, right?
Absolutely.
That's kind of right, and it seems it's a small enough number that if the opportunities are close enough that we're not going to bring in numbers that would make it, the administrative cost would offset the amount of numbers of students we bring in, right?
Just to piggyback on what they're saying, I'm looking at districts that are much larger, have much bigger budgets, have administrative people. I mean, like, we have people doing a bunch of different things because we're small, which is fine. I like the size of our district, but the one thing I don't want to do is add burden, especially if we're not being compensated for it. And so I think until we figure that out, I would lean not to do it until and the program is just a bit of a mess right now, and I'm just a little bit worried about that.
Great. Okay. I did hear from a parent. I'm trying to remember what you were talking about.
About doing an extracurricular activity, but couldn't do it in different districts.
Oh, yes, they're a Provo parent and they had reached out to Alpine and Alpine had said we will not take people who are not in our district boundary. But she also said she double checked with Utah Fits All, and according to them, that a family would be able to pay the school district directly. We don't have to be a vendor for the after school programs because they pay us out of pocket. And they're just not enrolled in the public schools and they wouldn't be using Utah Fits All money, so that if we provided a way for them to still participate without using the Top It's All, we could do that without going through the vendor. They would just have to pay out of their pocket.
Extracurricular activities too, there's special rules for UHSAA that we would have to fall under, I don't.
Would just be the homeschool rules.
Just the
It's just
homeschool
the,
rules.
it's the, well, actually, if you're not a vendor, then it's just the homeschool rules. So a
Right.
Timpview student could go to Timpview, a Provo student could go to Provo.
Alright, but we could set like almost like a vendor price, even though we're not choosing to be a vendor. We'd say, okay, you are Utah Fits All recipient, you wanna play tennis, whatever it is.
You can't do that unless you
Can't
choose to be a vendor.
Okay, that
You have to
sounds
be a
different
vendor.
than what-
Otherwise,
It would
if
just
you're
be
doing
like a
it that
fee.
way, then they pay the same fee that every
Okay,
other
that's what I
Provo High
thought.
and Timpview High
That sounds
student
different
pays.
than what what you're speaking to, Jennifer.
So what I thought too is just that there's a way they could participate.
Okay.
And they would pay us, but what Wendy's saying is they would pay us
Yes.
the same amount any
As
other
a
kid is,
homeschool,
and we
okay.
can't charge the administrative fees.
I was wondering, okay.
But do they get then that screened out by Utah Fits All if they discover that they're doing an extracurricular activity as a homeschool?
Not an
Not
extracurricular.
extracurricular.
It's not like dual.
No, it's only when they're
Like
when they're
if they're
capturing
taking a history
WPU
class
that's
or
gonna
something.
that's
Okay.
gonna flag it. That's correct.
Got it, okay. I have to say, I wish it weren't a huge administrative burden, because I actually like the idea of allowing Utah Fits All students to take some of our really amazing classes from some of our really amazing teachers. So, if there were a way to make it like less complicated and less burdensome, I actually would like to see Provo be a vendor. I mean, I just think of like Ann Crosland teaches a linear algebra class at Timpview that's so good, and there's so few Lin-Al classes for high school students. I would love students to come from wherever because they want to take that Lin-Al class from such an amazing teacher. That's just one example. But I just think, I wish there were a way that wasn't that arduous, but when you even just divide, let's divide Alpine in 3, you know, and now you're down to like fewer than 10 basically per district doing this. And so if it is a difficult administrative task and it's requiring a lot of time, then I agree that we just wait and see how they're able to better solve some of the problems with the program. But in general, I actually am not opposed to being a vendor. Jean?
Well, and I'm not necessarily opposed to them like taking our awesome classes, but there tends to be a line or I want our kids who are enrolled in the school district to have first
For
dibs
sure.
at those. Okay.
For sure. Yeah, I agree.
For students or Terry, do you guys have any comments on?
I have a few comments. I don't really like Utah Fits All. As of right now, I think it's really messy, and I think it's unfair to all the students who are enrolled into Provo School District. I don't like the idea that they can kind of just like opt out and say that they're homeschooled and then not pay the Utah Fits All fee. Because I feel like there's a loyalty that Provo School District has towards their teachers that Utah Fits All won't have because they're not with Provo School District. They're just using some of the amenities. And I also saw in some of the comments that what are we going to do if they randomly drop the class and the teacher set aside an entire campus coursework for them and made an entire different agenda for them and is doing all this extra work, and then they have the choice to just randomly opt out. So I feel like it's a lot of power in their hands right now, and I agree with Gina. I think we should probably wait until it's cleaned up a little bit more, until we adapt it. I do think it is a good idea. I like what Lisa was saying, how we do have great classes and all students should be allowed to take it, but I feel like to an extent. I think we should prioritize our students right now first.
Just kind of what they're like Monique was saying, it's too messy to really like get in there. In a way, I kind of like how the other school districts are doing it, because we can kind of just sit on the sidelines and watch and kind of like watch them kind of finesse it, and then we can kind of, once they figure it out, we can kind of adapt it to our own needs. But a lot of it, I feel like, relies on the honor system, and the honor system has a way of like really getting like pushed off to the side when it comes to certain things. So as of right now, I feel like it's just there's too many unknown variables for us to go in to this.
Thank you.
I have another question.
No.
If you become a vendor, can you not become a vendor?
So it sounds like we're not voting definitely, right? We're
No,
just deciding.
you're just deciding
Okay.
if you're gonna send it to policy committee to start looking at a policy and a procedure on it.
Okay, but if we decide we're not gonna do it, do we need a policy on that?
I think we would need some clarification on, what I don't want to have happen is someone to find out that someone is a Utah, to your example, someone is a Utah Fits All student, right? And the parent's just paying it outright, that we probably need some clarifying language that it ties to, they, at the elementary level, they can pay for this outright, or what we might want that to look like, if we're gonna choose not to be a vendor. I think the other piece that I would be concerned about is making sure that they're not taking the spot of a student that, you know, is attending our schools, so.
Can they right now, even a Utah Fits All scholarship recipient can participate in extracurricular activities at the secondary level as long as they pay out of pocket, is that correct?
As long as they pay the amount and they're at their boundary school.
Right,
Mhm.
okay, that's just what I wanted to confirm, that was my understanding.
So, am I representing the room correctly, saying that we are not going to be a vendor right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Alright.
Okay.
Let's move on to item number 14 with the whole slew of
Yeah.
large purchase
I'm
requests.
gonna turn off now, Bonnie.
There was gonna be one, now they kind of blossomed, but we'll get through these pretty quick. The first one is the Provo High School Elevate Grant. This was the amount we went through an RFP to choose a consulting firm that would help with that improvement plan with Provo High. The total cost of the contract is $99,960. That amount is paid over 4 years. The amount for this year would be $2,125. So this year, the amount, but we're just approving the full contract. So that one is, for that. The second one,
Wait,
second.
where's that money?
It was a grant that was provided.
From the grant.
Yep, the state.
And we're allocating the grant money.
Correct.
To this vendor.
Yep, part of that grant money will go to this vendor.
Thank you.
You're required through the
Yep.
grant to select a
Right,
vendor.
right, okay.
Yeah, that is one of the requirements, and so this is just an approval of that contract and the amount that will be paid over the next 4 years. The Centennial Middle School's art and pottery room cabinets are old and in pretty bad shape. Those 2 rooms, the cost for the cabinets and countertops are $68,100. That is part of the existing budget for this year. That was part of the rotation that we're working on. Yep. The next 2 are the tennis courts at Provo High and Timpview High. Both of the tennis courts are again needing to be replaced. The Timpview High School courts are a little sooner than they normally would be. But if you'll remember, a couple of years ago, there was some snow that was removed with a blade, which quickly made the refinishing a little bit more timely.
Yeah, why $10,000 difference?
There's 2 more courts at Timpview that are newer, that don't have to be refinished. So this is, the 2 that are separate, those were done at a later time, and they didn't scrape those. So the snow plow is what has made that one a little bit more timely.
So there's no more snow plow?
No, the problem is because the public uses it so much, they can bring their own shovels. And one of the issues is when they spread salt and then they scrape it. We had layers of the finishing and the scraped snow off to the side. So how we fix that long term is a different conversation.
But we should definitely have it because we've got to put some
Because
guardrails in place
when
so
would
this
we
doesn't
have
keep
normally?
happening.
Oh, absolutely.
When would we have, how many more years were we hoping to go?
At least 2.
They're not old.
Yeah,
They were
it's
just
At least 2 or 3. We're having to do it a little bit early, but the photos that they showed me with the holes in the middle of the court, just the peeled off, you can't play tennis competitively.
Can we lock them when there's snow until we've cleared it?
So this is a question. That one, it is constantly being used by the public. So that really is a conversation of whether we want to lock it for the public, or whether we want to have that be available for.
Even in the winter?
Committee
I
for
guess you could
facilities to
We
talk
can
about.
talk about
I play
facilities
tennis in
committee.
December.
Okay, I guess
So,
there are days
yeah.
that I could do that.
So there.
Do you
Long time
shovel the
ago.
court?
No.
Thank you.
Was it you?
No.
I
No,
never
so
saw
I
the
just
court.
said, like, before this time, the old court used to be covered in, from the, it was like the
Well, there are two
covering,
things.
but it would bubble.
Yeah, there are
It
two
was
things
so
that
bad.
we could do. There are two things, really. You could lock the gates when the weather's bad, so that there is no ability for them to get in and clear that court. The other option is to remove the nets during.
Which isn't a bad option either, because that keeps the nets longer too.
Correct,
Yeah,
but it's.
Let's take
Anyway,
that
that's
discussion
another-
to facilities
yeah.
and.
So that
yeah.
is something, if you wanna put that on our list for our next meeting, it is something our facilities department feels very strongly about. The Canyon Crest Kindergarten Playground, this is also part of this year's budget. The current playground is not good enough for the amount of kids that they have that are playing on it. So that cost is $58,840. And then there's two computer labs.
Ask about the playground? Has the kindergarten teacher seen the design and approved it?
Yeah, they had a couple to choose between.
Okay.
When is the install for that?
Sorry,
When
is
will
the install?
The install.
We have to get on the schedule. Once the purchase is approved, then we'll get on the schedule and I can report back to you. There's two CTE computer labs that need to be replaced, one at Provo High, one at Timpview. They're both 7 years old, and so it is time for those to be replaced, and those costs are there as well.
Are those out of the regular budget?
Out
or
of the
usually
regular
for-
CTE budget.
Okay.
Well, it'll be out of their carryover budget.
Any other questions about any of these? Okay, we will approve. We're gonna have so much fun in our business meeting tonight. Lots of things. So. All right, item number 15. We are going to move this to another meeting, and so we will move forward with item number 16, our health education curriculum review.
This is just because you guys have to vote on this in business meetings, so this is just a refresher that these are the members of the committee and you're just voting to approve them tonight in business meetings, so just wanted to review that.
Thank you. So we saw this at our last meeting. And is there any additional comments, questions? Okay. Great, that's the fastest 5 minutes.
I know.
Okay, item number 17, we are going to have a discussion about the Municipal Building Authority. So when we met in December, end of November, we talked about our desire to move forward on a Municipal Building Authority. And it was interesting because we had a meeting with Devin and Wendy and Rebecca and I, and half of us in the room thought we had determined one thing about it, and half of us thought the other, about are we waiting and doing the two on the exact same vote for an MBA, or are we moving forward with Timpview as soon as we're ready for that, and we do Dixon once we have our strategic plan, but we're not, even though we have desired to do both, are we going to do them at the same time or not? So we wanted tonight to clarify the will of the board on that, and maybe take a few minutes to kind of set a timeline for when we would take these votes and have our hearings and stuff.
So I'll give you the timeline of what we need to do, so that you have that in the front of your mind as we're making the decision. So we have to have a meeting where we adopt an intent resolution. So we have to break into our Municipal Building Authority board from the business meeting and then go back to the business meeting. So it's a separate, it would be a separate meeting, and it's really just an intent that we are going to be doing a Municipal Building Authority bond. So then for 14 days, at least 14 days after, we have to do the noticing. Well, for 14 days, we have 2 notices that we have to do in the paper that we will be voting on a bond. And then, so it's really just a 2-week process when we are doing all of the voting on it. And then once we do the resolution, the intent resolution, and we do the noticing. We do another meeting where we have, and this is at least 14 days after the first intent resolution. So you have the intent resolution, you do your postings, you have at least 14 days after your first one, you have your next meeting where and it has to start before, on or after 6 p.m. And again, we break into the Municipal Building Authority bond, or the Municipal Building Authority board, and we adopt a bond resolution authorizing the issuance of the bonds. Now, at that point in time, we actually put a dollar amount on the intent resolution, which is one of the reasons that we're having this discussion right now. But we do not have to issue them all, because my plan is, and I've met with Westland. Westland was selected to do the next phase of the Timpview construction. They will give us a drawdown schedule for each year, and then we will know what we can, what we will issue so that we can handle those drawdowns, and then we can make the burden on the taxpayers less than if we were to issue them all at one time. So we can spread that out and possibly get to another close to the end of another bond dropping off, and so it can be a little bit easier. And then once we do the resolution to issue the bonds, then we have 30 days before we can issue, because there is the contest period. And that is where if voters would have to do a written petition with at least 20% of the active voters in the district. And that would have to be filed for us, and then we would have to put it on a ballot in November. I haven't seen a successful contesting in a really long time, but that is something that could happen. I feel like there's a lot of public support for completing Timpview and doing something with Dixon. So that is the process that we have. So it's basically about a 6-week period between the time we do the intent resolution, the second meeting authorizing it, then the 30 days after that, in order to do that. So we can do that at any time. But one of the first thing we have to decide is, what are we going to put on the bond? Are we going to do just Timpview and then do this again when we're ready to do Dixon, or do we want to do an amount to at least get Dixon started and the design phase of that, and then do more once we get that design all finalized and ready to go.
How far out do you think we are from having final numbers for Timpview?
Right now, the original estimate that they gave us of around 60 million is still about the estimate. The design phase is still going on for the main school. So they're finalizing the cafeteria right now so that they can get that started after they're done with the phase that they're currently working on. And they're jumping right into the other design so that they may be able to start that earlier than what we had originally planned if we get this authorized before too long.
But we don't really know the scope of what we're asking with Dixon.
Correct. Yeah. Which is one of the challenges of jumping into it now. We really need to get the Timpview one authorized. Now we could do the Timpview one plus some that we know we're going to need to get Dixon started, so at least we know that that's going to be available as we start the selection process of a CMGC and an architect.
Right.
Because all of that, rather than having to go back and start that and figure out how we're going to pay for that portion while we're doing the planning part of it.
So what you're saying is you could incorporate the planning piece of that, so it also signals like this is where we're going and we are moving forward, but we just don't want to issue all of this at once until we know exactly.
And you can authorize a dollar amount and never issue all of them. So if we authorized, let's say we did 65 for Timpview and then 30 for Dixon, knowing that we're going to be doing something, we don't have to issue those 30. We have 10 years from the time we issue, but we approve the issuance to actually issue the bonds.
does that lock in the interest when you, I'm curious, like, if you're.
The issuance is where when you actually issue the bonds, not when you authorize the issuance, is when
So
we
it
have
doesn't.
the.
So I don't know
Yeah,
the
that's what I'm
advantage of doing
Correct.
it now. I guess I'm
I
not
think it's
clear.
just, the advantage of doing it now, like putting some aside for the planning process, is that it's ready to go once we're there, as opposed to
Correct.
this process, right, which is the 6 weeks or whatnot, then you're, that would be the advantage right now.
Yep. The advantage is having it available so we can get started right away
You're
when
not-
we're ready. But again, it's only 6 weeks that we have to put between when we decide.
How
But it
much
does
money
put
would
a
we
financial
need?
burden on the district if we decide to go forward, get bids, then get a cost. So we could reimburse ourselves with that as long as we write that into bond language, but. That's right.
But only if we know we have a way to fund that entire project. I personally feel concerned about funding the start of a project if we don't have kind of public and we haven't.
A plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know that.
And
I'm a
we
little-
don't have to. The original discussion that we had back in November was we wanna do both of them. But I'm nowhere near to knowing what we need for Dixon
Right.
until we actually decide what we're gonna do with Dixon and start that process.
So, yeah, and so we can do both of them on the same authorization, so we would just wait till we knew what we were doing with Dixon. Or we could still do both of them through an MBA, we just have 2 different times when we authorize. So we would authorize Timpview when we're ready with Timpview, and we would authorize Dixon a few months later when we're ready with that information.
And I know you guys are gonna hate me because it's clear that I don't remember things. I should have gone back and re-listened to prior discussion.
Well, the half
But
of us
is there,
didn't remember
is
either.
there a, like, we would, did we decide we are for sure doing an MBA to fund both versus?
Yes, we did decide that.
Okay, thank you.
That was the consensus in the room, but no official vote has been.
All right.
Other thoughts, comments? I see some of you, I can tell you've got something.
How much money are we talking, like you said, $30 million for the Dixon project, is that really how much we would need?
Oh, heavens, no, but
No.
that would get us started at least with the beginning of the project. So that's the problem. Oh, there is, I'm not giving you my recommendation, I'm giving you the options. So we can do one issuance now for Timpview, and then when we are ready for Dixon, we can go through the process again. So.
But you don't see a pro or con versus either way?
I think when it's just like, the reason to do it together now is just ease of access as decisions need to be made versus starting that time clock again that you've described around the process of making the decision for the amount for Dixon later. Is that true?
Correct.
Is that the
Yeah,
only?
the benefit is that the money would be available to us to issue to start the Dixon project right when we have a plan. Rather than saying, okay, we know what we're gonna do, then we need to get an architect and drawings and a CMGC, and that, well, all those expenses are gathering as we're doing the plan before we get the bids.
What's CMGC?
CMGC is Construction Manager General Contractor, so there is a slash between them. So basically that the contractor comes in and is our general contractor and our construction manager.
I don't have a problem with doing Timpview and then some Dixon so that we can get ready going on it and once we've made the decision what we're doing.
I think personally I don't either. I think I feel like when I've talked to constituents, what I'm saying, not saying, but thinking about wanting to be committed to having a plan before we're asking for a dollar amount, which I know that's what we're saying is we're gonna need at least the 30, right, to start. And so I get that, but I'm just curious the optics of like, until we really have a plan for Dixon and the feasibility study done, is it just better to not, just to wait? Just because I think that's committing to that idea of we aren't going to get money until we have a plan.
So
we could even,
I know that's
if we wanted to get a little money for Dixon to get started, it doesn't have to be 30 million. It could
Sure.
be, 5 million, and that shows that we're committed to this
Right.
project, but we're just only right now asking for enough to pay for the initial architect stuff and things like that. I think Devin is just throwing out a number,
I just
right?
threw out
We
Yes,
can-
and
I do not
yeah.
have any specific, really my goal is to make sure that the citizens know that we have a commitment to
Yeah,
do the
and I
project.
recognize that too.
More than we're saying it'll be way off in the future and we're really wanting to get Timpview done. So I just want to make sure that they know that we do really want to get this project going, but we want to make sure we're doing it responsibly,
Right.
which is going to take some time. And I'm good either way. That both of the options are.
And we have 10 years to utilize that money. It doesn't matter.
We have 10 years to issue it. If we don't use it
Then
once
it's
it's issued, then we can have penalties.
Gina and Terry, what are your thoughts?
I actually want to hear from the students, because if you guys are clueless about what's going on, we have to explain this to the public. So, do you guys understand what Devin's talking about?
I'll back up and give you just a little bit.
We need the version though.
I'll do a very abbreviated version. So to build buildings in districts, there's only two options. Both of them are bonding, which is asking the taxpayers to pay for us to borrow money to build buildings. One way is a GO bond that has to be voted on by the voters.
A general obligation.
And a general obligation bond. Then you have a Municipal Building Authority bond, which is the MBA bond, also called lease revenue bonds. That is still from the taxpayers, but from a different levy. So we actually have to ask for additional money for that to make those payments, separate from just having a payment made. That does not have to go to the voters unless there's a contest of the bond after the 30 days. That one just has to be approved by the Municipal Building Authority Board, which is the same as our school board, but they are a different legal entity. But those are the two options that a school district has in order to fund the school buildings, because we're not given extra money to replace our infrastructure from the government. So.
And with the GO bond, we would have to wait until November for the citizens to vote on it.
But it does often feel like there's more oversight and input into a general obligation bond, because citizens get to vote whether or not they want taxes and other resources used to pay for that project, right? So one is to decide without the voters, and there are pros and cons to each one.
But when we have a project like Timpview, we know, and Dixon, but Timpview, the timeliness, we need to get that project done. I think you could say there's consensus that if the public doesn't vote for a general obligation bond, we will probably do an MBA bond because the project needs to get finished.
Okay.
We would just be behind a year, right?
You're talking about for Dixon or Timpview?
Right now I'm specifically talking about Timpview.
Timpview, if we
because
waited till
yeah.
November, we wouldn't get started until when?
Until the next February or March, yeah. If it was
It'd be a year
authorized.
away from now.
For the municipal, sorry, I don't know if
No,
I'm
you're
saying that
good.
right. Okay.
Just that
for
bond,
for
yes.
that bond, is that a bond for both Timpview and Dixon?
That's what
That's what
we're
we're
deciding
deciding.
right now.
Oh, okay.
is-
Because I'm saying right now we don't know what we're doing with Dixon.
Correct.
So,
Right.
in a way, the GO bond would be better for us because that gives us time to, get out to the public, see what they would want done, and also consider our viewpoint on what we would want done with Dixon. And then, how much funding do we have as of right now to finish up Timpview? How badly and how quickly do we need that money to finish Timpview?
Well, it's about 65 million. Our fund balances are not enough we wouldn't be able to do the project unless we did a bond.
Okay.
Gina, do you have, oh, sorry, Patrick.
No, all good.
Well, and the only reason to do an MBA bond for Timpview is to keep the construction crews on site. Then
Which saved us some money.
yeah, that would save money.
And one of the arguments about, and this is, if I get it wrong, Gina, let me know. the reason that we discussed doing an MBA bond for both Timpview and Dixon was because the optics of saying we're gonna go ahead and approve Timpview, but then we're gonna not go ahead and authorize Dixon but make the voters choose, seems like we have the commitment to Timpview and not to Dixon. So that was one of the reasons we talked about doing them together. Now, our intent resolution can always say this is what we're issuing for Timpview with the intent to do additional ones for Dixon. We don't necessarily need to say that, but so that there is that intent language in there, it could soften it. But that's the reason why doing the MBA bond and the GO bond, we talked about it, but we had gone away from that just because we didn't want that optics to be, we're going to go ahead with an MBA bond for Timpview and make the voters decide on Dixon.
That was going to be my comment was, if the world was perfect, well, we wouldn't be here. If the world was perfect, they would be paid for by someone else. I would prefer that we just get Timpview going and then put Dixon on the ballot, but the chances of Dixon passing, I think, are, and then what we're going to have is Timpview gets funded and Dixon does not, and then we're going to end up right back where we all started. And I feel like we've done a lot of work to repair some of the damage that has been done, and I mean,
so we've already had that, like, we've already decided
that question that we're
right,
all
so
wanting to go answering that.
right, but I feel like we're still talking about that now. Like, we don't want to get that. So whatever we do for the way that we fund Timpview needs to be the way that we fund Dixon.
Yep.
No questions.
So what's the question here then?
So the question is,
Do we,
we're gonna do MBAs for both. Do we do them on the timing that works for each of those sites on their own timing? So we likely would do Timpview in the next couple of months, but Dixon, we're waiting for a feasibility study and stuff, so we do it after we have those results and we've determined exactly what we're gonna do and we know the amount we need. So they would be two separate MBAs, two different meetings where we would authorize them, right? Or do we wait until we know everything about Dixon before we authorize for both?
Whatever happens, it needs to be with the same board. We cannot push this off until we have another board, because we're going to have a different board in 2 years. Right. So it needs to be within this 2-year period of time.
I think we're all on
in the resolution.
I think we're all planning
we
to
can
do it
actually
even
have
sooner
the
than that.
discussion about it, but not put it in the intent resolution to say that we're doing Timpview on this one. Our next one will be Dixon within however much time we want.
So Gina, would you prefer we take the MBA for Timpview now and take some money to start Dixon at the same time? That's what that was kind of where we started.
Which would show some intent that that's what we're trying to do.
As long as what the money that we
plan,
plan to do is not actual construction, because once you start construction, you need to finish construction, right? But if the money is to be used for designs and plans and things like that, I would be more okay with that.
And that's what
But I think it would be very hard to do a good MBA bond if we don't know the cost, right?
Correct.
My preference
So that
would
was
be
just
to
the
do
point of it.
Timpview's costs in this with language and the intent around resolution around Dixon, and if you can put timeline even just in that language, maybe.
I don't know if you can do that.
I just don't want to put money, I guess I would rather do them separately, does it? Because
with no, even to have money set aside to do planning, like the pre-stuff.
I want to get the results of that boundary and feasibility study. I really want to make sure we know what we're deciding and we have all of that data. I want to make sure we're looking at all of our resources, and then we know what questions we're even asking. What I'm afraid of is we make a best guess and we start putting, $5 million even towards something, and then as information's coming in, we're rethinking. I don't know. I like.
But didn't we just say we don't have to use the money if we don't need it? So
we wouldn't issue it.
But we correct. We
I
wouldn't
just
issue it.
authorize
We just
it.
authorize
Conscious
the issuance.
It's
of
just
the
that we would
stewardship
get,
to take that money to
if we
designate it.
It sounds like after 10 years, if we don't issue it, then we get a penalty.
We don't get a
No,
penalty
if you don't issue it, you don't. It's just if you
we
issue and don't
use
spend
it. Okay.
So Devin, do we have an idea of how much, like design work, how much it would cost to design a school.
A $50 million building, I just looked it up, it's about $7.5 million.
So our costs would be about $7.5 million to design.
In case of inflation, we rounded up to 10, and they added on to the tip field.
And then we
I
don't
have
have to
another
issue it yet,
question
we can
about
just
what the
authorize
state
it, right?
legislature
Say,
passed last
that's what
year.
I'm
What is the
asking.
maximum?
200 over a 2-year period. We won't get anywhere close with both of the projects. Now, some of the $7.5 million is paid during the project. It's not all at the beginning. So they do a monthly charge for all of their work until they get to what the contract amount is, and part of that is through the construction process.
So, do we, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. With the MBA, if we did a Timpview one, is there could we do a Dixon one in 1 month? Is there some sort of regulation that you can't do another one right away?
So there is no regulation that says we couldn't issue.
And is there a
two.
deadline that we have to do an MBA before a certain period if they were to get this 20% active voter sign? Is there some sort of rules on timeline?
Right,
as far
so
as
make
that
sure that we're
goes?
being transparent and clear with the public.
So
on our
I think
timing
you'd want to
do
wait
that.
at least till after the 30 days of the first contest period, and then
Right.
you'd start that process over again, which would then be 6 months after.
6 months.
6 weeks. So you've got the 14 days and then the 30 days once you've got.
But you wouldn't have, we wouldn't, in my view, in reality, it would take a little more time than that anyway to have a clear enough picture of what we're
Correct,
doing.
yeah. So, I mean, this is not even, I hate to give my opinion because then if I change my mind, because this is not an
We're all
opinion,
on
this
that
is
same
more
boat, yeah.
information. If we put in the beginning of the design fees where we could at least get that started, get really good bids on what that building would cost, and then and allow the public some time to look at it and comment and get excited about it, and then do an MBA bond at the end of that design phase when we have the bids, we can do something like that. That would only require us to probably have a couple $1 million extra on this bond in order to get to that point where we could do those bids.
Which is the goal, that was the goal I'm speaking to, that once we really are starting the construction, we have a really good solid plan, right?
Right.
Number-wise even too, for the most part.
Be able to
Right.
put together a
To say, this
Dixon
is what we're,
construction
this is what this
committee
project's
and, so.
If there isn't, sorry, I'm losing my voice as time goes, if there isn't, in my mind, an amount of money put towards the design, I think there will be some fears from the public that we have some other plan for Dixon that doesn't involve reconstituting that building in some sort of way, that we're waiting for the boundary and feasibility study and we're just going to sell it or something else is going to happen, and I get really concerned that lack of trust exists there. Whereas if you're saying there's going to be this amount of money specifically for the design of that site, it at least signals that we are holding on to that property.
And we are planning on doing
And we are
something
planning
with it
on
soon.
doing something soon, because we would not put that investment, we're not just gonna let it sit there. So that would be my only reservation about keeping it completely separate.
So how about, from what I'm hearing, let me throw this out there and see how everyone feels, that we would move forward with Timpview when we're ready for that, with a little bit of money to go towards the design with Dixon, and we can publicize as board members and even as a district as much as we want what our intent is for both of them, right? Especially for Dixon. And then once we know the details of Dixon, then we would then authorize those ones separately. Are we,
Yes.
is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And in the meantime, we can work out those exact dollar amounts of how much we would do for the Dixon and all of that on the first one, so.
So I really like the idea of doing a bond when we have a good idea of what it's going to cost and what we're doing.
Absolutely.
So that's my big thing, but I also know that I want to make sure that the public understands that we do have a strong commitment to doing something with
When
this.
are we looking at possibly doing Timpview?
We could start that process as soon as.
And have it on
in February or.
Yeah. So
we can
we'll
start
start
that
planning the
process.
agendas for that. Okay, we are going to save our consent calendar review for when we are actually going to, right before we approve it, we'll go over that since we are out of time today, and then just take a note of the calendar items that are listed so wonderfully here in our agenda. And do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Move that we adjourn.
Okay.
This meeting.
Thank you. We are adjourned, and we will begin the business meeting ideally in 5.5 minutes.
Because we don't need a motion
Hey.
instead.
How many documents?